Today on
Doomed!
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is seen as a hero to many people across the country for his portrayal on TV in the early months of the coronavirus pandemic. But New Yorkers know better. Behind that TV persona is a New York governor who has been riddled with corruption scandals over his tenure. And joining me on this episode of Doomed with Matt Binder is New York State Assemblyman Ron Kim. And we'll discuss his recent phone call with Andrew Cuomo as he tried to uncover more information about the COVID-19 nursing home scandal. And folks, as always, you can support this show by going to youtube.com/MattBinder and subscribing to the channel. Also, if you're watching live, you could drop a super chat in the feed to ask your questions or comments. And patreon.com/MattBinder to become a member. And without any further ado, let me pull up my guest for this episode of the show, New York State Assemblyman Ron Kim. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Matt. And thank you for the invitation.
I don't want to go right into the Cuomo phone call yet. I'm sure a lot of people are tuned in right now to hear about this because this was, big news in national media. What I do want to talk about first is, honestly, what I think is the more important aspect of this. Like, we all love a good political scandal, and it makes for good TV, and it's obviously important when it comes to what the governor's doing. But to me, the real issue is what caused all this. And you've been talking about this since, what was it, March or April of the coronavirus pandemic of last year. And that is what happened in the nursing homes of New York when the pandemic first hit this state. I mean, we were the first in the country to really take the full brunt of this pandemic. Ron, can you break down for everybody what this nursing home scandal is? What happened in New York State's nursing homes?
So there are many critical points. I'm going to try to break it down into a few major things that had happened. So COVID hits America, and we get a notice by the federal government to every single nursing home in the country around February, just warning the facilities that this is going to hit these facilities hard. You need to get ready. You need to prepare. So early March, despite my progressive colleagues saying I shouldn't give this money or power to the governor, I actually say no. Like, my constituents, I have a lot of nursing homes. I have a lot of older adults. They're scared. Washington is not doing anything for us. So despite whether you like him or dislike him, this could be his best opportunity to show his leadership. I mean, as you know, Cuomo is a micromanager. He likes to control everything. So you think, well, this is an opportunity. You can go to your strength and actually do something positive with your best traits. So I stood up in Democratic conference, and co-sponsored the bill to give him a $40 million of early emergency money and more centralized powers to get ahead of the coronavirus. We give him that, and time goes by, and it was failure after failure after failure. My constituents are screaming on the ground, we can't get in. The virus is spreading everywhere because of Cuomo's infamous executive order to send 9,000 COVID patients to these facilities. And at the peak of doing that on April 2nd, he put in a toxic bill in the state budget that give a corporate liability for some of the worst nursing home executives and corporations behind these facilities. What that is, Matt, is what I call a license to kill. It's basically saying you won't be charged of any wrongdoing for taking these COVID positives into your facilities. And then 2 weeks ago, his top aide had a private meeting with us and admitted that they covered up life and death information about nursing homes because of the politics, because of Donald Trump tweeting at every day at Governor Cuomo, and because they don't want the Department of Justice to use that information for politics. First of all, Matt, this is a crazy, a wild, accusation where if it's like going to a court and saying if you have a judge that's really mean to you and he might be even be racist, but there is a fine that comes with something that you did wrong. Are you not going to pay that fine because the judge is very mean? No, it doesn't pass the legal test, and so she admitted to an obstruction of justice, in my opinion. So that's how I read it, and I had a public duty to now tell the public what happened because now I'm implicated in the cover up. I was quoted in the paper next day of what I thought of the meeting, of what she said, and the governor calls the next day, that night, and threatens me and my political career and my livelihood if I don't issue a statement to counter what I heard. So in other words, if I don't lie for him to cover up for Melissa DeRosa, his top aide.
Jeez, so what do we know about the COVID nursing home deaths at this point? What are the numbers as were given by Cuomo's administration? How many people died died in nursing homes, period, but in my estimation, I think many experts agree, due to this policy that the Cuomo administration had to have people who had tested positive for COVID being sent back to the nursing home that they stayed in instead of being put in another facility away from people in the nursing home who don't have COVID.
Right. So right now we have a little bit over 15,000 older adults who died in these facilities. That is an unimaginable number of people in our state who died from this. And we have outside analysis that indicate up to possibly over 1,000 people died unnecessarily because of his mandate to send COVIDs back to nursing homes. Nursing homes, when this mandate came in, were screaming, half of our staff are sick of COVID. We don't have PPE. We're not prepared. Why are you sending COVID positives? These were 3,000 returning patients and 6,000 new COVID patients that went to the hospital. Instead of sending them back home, they send them to the nursing home. So it really just spiraled out of control. And the businesses went to the governor and lobbied and wrote that corporate legal immunity and put it in the budget word for word. They even bragged on one of their websites that they wrote the bill to give them corporate legal shield, and the governor put it in. So that really is at the core of this scandal because he received over $2 million of campaign donations from the same in the hospital nursing home industry that wrote that bill and put it in there. Meanwhile, he did not talk to one family. He didn't talk to one lawmaker that was yelling on the ground of seeing what's wrong. He didn't talk to one worker during that period. The people who are struggling, the most in pain, the most in difficult times should be the ones leading the policies. But he didn't give us a chance to even be a part of that process.
Right. Now, when you say on the ground screaming, I want people to understand you literally mean on the ground screaming because there is and I watched it when it first came out. I live in your district and there's this video of you in front of a nursing home in Flushing, Queens. I'm very familiar with that nursing home. I live not far from it. And you are asking for answers as to what's going on. And I remember the news stories about specifically one woman who couldn't find out what was going on with, I believe it was her mother or her father, some very close family member. She just wanted to know what was going on in this nursing home and she couldn't find out. And I believe, and I remember that time period. It will haunt, I'm sure, many New Yorkers forever, where literally every 30, 40 minutes, an ambulance just screeching down the street. And a lot of these ambulances were headed to and coming from these nursing homes. And that nursing home you stood in front of, I believe, at the end of, at this point right now, we're not at the end of the pandemic quite yet, knock on wood, but, something like, 80 people in that one nursing home or something like that, or 60? It's some ridiculously high number from one single nursing home. I think when you hear 15,000 people in nursing homes in the state, that is a lot. But when you consider just even at the per nursing home level, to me that's even more astounding.
Yeah, 100%. It was a woman named Berna Lee. It was her mother who she knew was exposed to COVID because she saw some of the FaceTime footages. She was sleeping in the hallway because there was an entire floor of people who were dying on one floor, and the families were banned from entering. They knew that they were understaffed. Even the director was out for almost 2 weeks because he was sick of COVID. It was just an insane situation that I found myself in front of that nursing home. And I realized once that story broke, story after story, there were places all across Queens in the city that were going through the same situation.
I specifically too. I remember, driving by that nursing home, and as the weeks went on, all of a sudden there were safety precautions put up. There was like a screen put at the door, like things that you think would have been some sort of a statewide mandate to do certain things at the very least to help stop the spread. If we're still sending these people there that weren't there in the beginning, like it was almost shocking to me how late some of these things were implemented.
Yeah, and I think there was a window of time, Matt, when if they just owned up to it, right? Hey, we totally dropped the ball on this, and we had no idea what we were doing. I'm sorry. We tried our best, but we couldn't control the transmission in nursing homes. It went in one way or the other, and we tried our best. We thought that giving the businesses some legal shield would be an immediate band-aid to give them the tools to survive for a couple of weeks. I don't know. They could have been just totally honest. And I think you, me, and the public would have forgiven the governor if he came out clean back in May and said there was triage, number of things. We didn't know what was in the hospital, nursing homes. We made a couple of bad calls. These are the bad calls. I'm sorry, and we're going to repeal those bills and try to correct them now. He had a small window back in May, June, July to be honest about it, but he didn't do it. He suppressed the data. And this is the most twisted thing. Someone in his administration told the commissioner, said, you know what, we're going to actually decouple the data. So we're not going to count the people who are dying in the hospitals who were transferred from nursing homes. Imagine that. So if you got sick and you went to a hospital and you died there, you weren't counted as a nursing home fatality. Only state in the entire country. So all of a sudden our numbers drop and we are in the middle of the pack, whereas at the beginning we were number one, number two. And then the governor looks heroic. Oh, our numbers don't look that bad in the facilities. He gets a book published in October, and he continues to have this image of a hero. But imagine if they released the real numbers in real time. We would have had the tools, the data set to legislate, to repeal that legal immunity back in June and say, this is wrong. We're going to hold the nursing homes accountable. We're going to make these for-profit monsters spend every dollar they have to save people's lives. And if you don't, we are going to prosecute. Imagine he did that. How many lives would have been saved?
Right, right, and my honestly, if my belief is that a lot of these decisions were made based on that book deal. To be quite honest, I mean, it's almost if you look at Cuomo, over the summer, like once he learned more about the virus and the nursing home deaths, in New York started to do better, even the nursing homes. He was being very cautious, very cautious. Then all of a sudden, you fast forward to after and the numbers were getting good. And then all of a sudden, you fast forward, the book comes out, and then all of a sudden, we got a new wave of the virus coming in. The numbers are going up. But instead of doubling down and going, okay, we have to institute some of those precautionary measures we took earlier on, all of a sudden we're reopening the restaurants in time for Valentine's Day. Just so happens the coronavirus decided that would let people go out and have a nice meal on Valentine's Day. Like there's definitely a difference between how cautious he was once he got a handle on some things over the summer, that book deal comes out, and then how he's acting now. It's almost like all the decisions he's making, including this scandal trying to hide these numbers of nursing home deaths. It's all to save face so he continues to look like the Cuomo that wrote that book, The Big Hero.
Yeah, and if there were at all monetary reasons, if he monetized off of COVID and made, and we don't know how much money he made. I think he has to disclose that soon. But we are also hearing there was internal memos saying he's not allowed to do this. You can't just write a book, make money in the middle of your governing. You have to get approval. There's an ethics process. And apparently, the main ethics committee sent out a memo warning him not to do it. We still have not seen that memo. Somewhere somebody lost it. We can't fold anything from the administration. But sooner or later, he has to disclose how much money he made, and we expect to be in the millions of dollars of advancement for that book. And if there is a memo that says he wasn't supposed to do that, then I think he's in a lot of trouble because he monetized off of COVID while people died. And if he suppressed information and there's evidence of that, then he should really be held accountable to a different level of court. And I don't know what that is, but he should be thoroughly investigated because he has blood on his hands at that point.
Do we have any idea? Like, is there any expert analysis? Maybe some university or institution or some high, I don't know. But do we have some sort of expert analysis out there on just how many deaths there actually are in the nursing homes? Like you said, there was 15,000 statewide. Do we know how many are missing from that number?
Uh, there's still a few hundred numbers that the Department of Health could not validate for whatever reason. But it's around that. It's around that range, and that's what the independent research from the state attorney general's office predicted when she released her report, which was about a 50% undercount, according to her 70-page report. So it's around 15,000 to 16,000 number of folks who died in nursing homes.
Now, there's been a lot of talk I've seen about trying to strip Cuomo of some of his powers. Now, what exactly does that entail? Because I think people outside of New York, you know what? People in New York don't know how powerful the governor of New York is. I would venture that 90% of the things that people who live in New York City blame Bill De Blasio for, and Bill De Blasio certainly has plenty of blame to go around to him too for a lot of things. But honestly, I would venture to say that 90% of the things New Yorkers think Bill De Blasio controls and is responsible for actually is in the control of Governor Cuomo.
100%. And and a lot of people don't like the mayor for whatever reason. And I think he comes off sometimes incompetent or his image just rubs people the wrong way. But I respect the mayor because he shows up every single week, 2, 3 times a week, consistently on schedule to be publicly grilled by the press and media, no filters, ask me whatever you want for 2 hours. And he takes all the critiques in stride. And he never hides data. Good news or bad news, here's what we have, here's the data. And he takes all the criticism. I don't respect that. That's how government should be. If you're failing at certain policies, don't lie about it. Let the public judge you. Take the criticism and try to get better at those policies. That's what he did, and I actually respect that about this mayor. This governor obviously is a micromanager, and he is, in my opinion, the most powerful executive governor in the history of New York, and it's done through design. People forget, everyone knows that Mario Cuomo was his father, so he was born into Albany. He knew where everything was constructed and how to consolidate power at a very young age. Every year, every budget, every legislative cycle, little by little by little, he has consolidated powers away from the state comptroller, away from the attorney general, away from us, where he literally was able, as you remember the Amazon deal, behind closed doors, unilaterally, without anyone consulting, cut a deal for $3 billion of tax incentives, of our taxpayers' money. That happened not overnight, over years of consolidated power that he has garnered through the budget cycles. So in a budget, it's supposed to be only about finance, revenues, and taxes, etc. But there are bills called the Article 7 bills. These are policies that can be put in. That's how the legal immunity got stuck in the budget. In a 5,000-page document, he put it in the last minute in the budget because he knew if it was a standalone bill, there was no way it would pass. So through those type of methods, he would put in these toxic poison bills to consolidate more power for himself, and that's why he is where he is. Um, I would surmise as almost a demagogue in New York that has overseen some of the worst policies in this pandemic.
Now, when Cuomo called you and you were on the phone with him, and you came out to the press, what made you decide to come out to the press? Because all I've seen is, well, I've seen two things, and one is the reaction I'm surprised about, and that's people who are in shock about this being the type of person Cuomo is. And then I see people who've been working in New York politics, some people who I've worked with over the years, and the reaction is, yeah, this is who he is. Like, we've known finally someone who was who was directly in his path is coming out and saying something, because this is who he's been, and we haven't been able to really come out and say this. What made you decide to come out and essentially put the governor on blast?
Yeah, it was a tough couple of days. So I received that call on a Thursday night, 8 p.m. It was a 10-minute call. My wife and my family were terrorized by that call. My wife couldn't sleep. She cried for 2 hours, begging me to stop everything that I was doing, blaming me for bringing this type of harm to our family. The next day was actually Lunar New Year Day, so we had family stuff going on. I was running errands, and my wife never calls me because she works in the day. I was gone for a few hours and I didn't pick up, and she was like freaking out. Something happened to me. It was that level of terror that my wife and my family was feeling from that one phone call. The next Saturday, I received 8 phone calls from the governor's office, 4 directly from himself and 4 from his staff. And then I realized he's not going to stop. He is going to continue to push me to write a statement that is a lie and that I don't believe in. So at that point, I decided that I need to retain a lawyer to protect myself and to make sure that everything is documented properly. And I told the governor on Monday, or his office, that if he wants to contact me regarding this, he needs to contact my lawyer moving forward. I didn't decide at that point whether I wanted to move to go public with what happened. It was really at the Monday press conference when he went on and on about how everyone knew about this. The Senate knew about the cover up, basically, and the Assembly knew about the Department of Justice, and no one knew about it. So I realized there is a clear, a dangerous, and corrupt pattern of behavior, which is him trying to implicate privately and publicly as many people as possible in the cover up. That's when I realized that this is not going away, and I need to uh, take a stance and push this forward. I sent out a memo that night calling for an immediate uh, repeal of all his powers, which wasn't accepted with the positive note from my colleagues that Monday night. And then the next couple of days, I decided to come out, and I did so on Wednesday with an article in CNN and New York Times, which broke on the same day when he had a press conference and he made good on his threat. And he spent 20 minutes trying to ruin my reputation and career at his press conference.
Now, as this continues to roll, honestly, I think this is one of the few times where, and we could, there's a few scandals I'll mention in a little bit. This, I don't think people really know, because unfortunately, people pay attention to local politics because they could go and walk over and visit their local, assemblyman or state senator or city council member at their office, or they pay attention to national politics because it's the big. That's what's in the news all the time. And President Biden, President Trump, the Senate, the House. But when it comes to state politics, I feel like there's this weird, it's just almost ignored. I know there's great outlets that cover it, but for some reason it's just not, it's just not local enough for people to be accessible to people, and it's just not national enough to be, as juicy, I guess, as that the press would cover it even more so than they already do. So I feel like, Cuomo has had so many scandals over the years where anyone who has been paying attention thought that, hey, maybe this will be the one. And then, after so many times seeing it's not, there never was that one that came across, being so disheartened that maybe he'll just get away with everything. We finally see this one, and I think the dominoes are finally starting to fall over and catch up to Cuomo, and maybe they'll finally knock him down too. Like, I mean, this has connected for some reason, and I feel like, have they gone at you anymore since? Because I feel like at this point they might realize that they're losing this one.
They have now reached out to me directly. I think through different channels, they made a couple of attempts to communicate. But I think more importantly, to Matt, to your point, going back to why did he pick up that phone call and to intimidate me for 10 minutes? This is the first in 8 years he's never called me on the phone. I have had dinner with them, right? I've had events with them. When his father died many years ago, I saw him at an event. We had a moment because I actually worked for his father when I was a freshman in college. I was a doorman at his father's apartment for a summer for 3 months. So I knew him intimately for that during that time period. I shared that moment with them when his father died, when I saw him, and he even like touched my leg at one point and said, "Thank you for sharing that story." It was a very warm moment. So I mean, that was a long time ago, right? So I share that because he doesn't pick up the phone and yell at people and make threats. And so I realized now that I have some time away from the incident, he acted that way because we are so close to the truth, and we are at the heart of something he did really bad, and he knows it. And he allowed his top donors, who gave him millions of dollars, to write toxic bills in the budget that led to unnecessary deaths in nursing homes. And he doesn't want that to get out. And he also suppressed numbers so we wouldn't be able to repeal some of those bad policies his top industry leaders wrote for him. And he doesn't want that to get out. And that's why he just did whatever he could to suppress anyone who's willing to tell the truth about his corrupt ways.
Right, right. And, since you came out, we have Lindsey Boylan, who is a former aide to Cuomo. She's come out with her own story about working for the governor, which she claims, and she wrote a really strong, heartfelt piece coming out and sharing how she was sexually harassed by the governor while working for him. And then State Senator Alessandra Biaggi, she came out and told the story how she sat down with the governor when she first was elected. She's a young woman, got elected to the state senate in 2018. She sits down with the governor, and as she's leaving, he basically brings up her grandfather, who got, I believe he got expelled or had to resign from the House of Representatives back when he was a congressman due to some scandal. But he hinted at it like in a very inappropriate way, like, "Oh, and remind me what happened to your grandfather again," just completely like out of the blue for no reason. And it's just like all these stories.
She felt threatened when she said that. She was
Right.
very, yeah.
Right. It's just this whole culture coming from the governor of just basically, it's really, like mafia-esque. Like the whole, this subtle threats, like the nod and the wink while saying something, so what he means without him actually just coming outright and saying it. It's just very, and this is a governor who now I'm not sure if you were around for some of this, but I do know you've been an assemblyman. How long have you been assemblyman again for Ron?
Since 2013.
So I believe this was when you were, or this is probably when you were just getting into the assembly. Cuomo had set up this commission to root out corruption, the Moreland Commission.
That's right.
And the commission was supposed to root out corruption in New York politics, and the commission actually was directed through their investigation to Cuomo himself, who suddenly decided it's time to break up the commission. I guess we don't care about corruption in New York anymore. Just really weird that happened, right? I mean, what a coincidence.
It was supposed to be an independent commission that he directed. And as soon as they discover some things that he didn't want to go out, he was like, no, you've done your job, so we're going to break up the commission. You're right. And then I think it was Preet, the Southern U.S. Attorney, who went in and took everything from the commission that led to obviously some of the other prosecutions as a result.
Right, right. And then after that, there was, I mean, I remember going up and, doing a report for where I was working at the time, a couple of years ago about there was a Flint-like water crisis in upstate New York in the town of Hoosick Falls that really did not get real much of any attention outside of local press. And Cuomo went in every turn when the people of Hoosick Falls were begging for an investigation, for something to happen, for something to get to the for someone to get to the bottom of what was going on in their town with their water, and Cuomo tried to sweep this under the rug too.
Yeah, no, it's time after time. There's so many different things, that and the upstate economic development projects where he
Right.
paid, yeah, I think we did the numbers, $1.5 million a job in Buffalo for his solar power, Buffalo Billion project, right?
Right.
That was like a 1 week news cycle that went away. And then we have Joe
Some of it.
Percoco. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, and then his top aide, Joe Percoco, who was arrested and is still in federal prison. No one's really talking about that either. I mean, I think Matt, you're right. Because it's state politics, he has a couple of bad cycles, and people forget about what he did
Right.
very quickly.
Not to get too into Buffalo Billions, but just to add to your great summary of it, three of his the person who was put in charge of the
That's right.
program and two Cuomo mega donors ended up being convicted in a federal bid rigging scheme. I mean, it's almost impossible that like you keep mentioning too, that this micromanager that he is did not know about this stuff, yet somehow, some way, at every turn, all of Cuomo's best buddies, his closest aides, his top donors go down in scandal after scandal, and this micromanager governor just says, I have no idea this was going on. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, and I hope that that phone call reveals to the world that he does know, that he is directly trying to influence people in the cover up and implicate people like me in his web of lies. So I hope that now that the world is watching and every media is paying attention, that there will be full accountability. And I told them, we had a press conference yesterday, Matt. One of the demands that we made: turn over all the communication with this lobbyist to the press and to the public as soon as possible. Because I must have submitted 10 FOIL requests to this date in 3 years. They have not complied with one FOIL request. They do not give up information. They shred it, they get rid of it. Their emails expire every 1 month. They have burner phones that they recycle every other week. I mean, it is an operation that is so shady that I can't even fathom how it's even considered public service.
Right, jeez. I didn't. I mean, the burner phones make sense for the way their operation is run, but I guess I never thought of that. Now let's move on to what another problem that is really sweeping New York, and honestly, it's probably something. I mean, it's definitely something that's being going on around the country, and that is this rash of anti-Asian sentiment going on in the wake of the pandemic over this past year. Now, I remember. I mean, I've been covering it on this show for since the pandemic started, because living in Queens, in this district, I mean, I saw, like I'm sure you did too, obviously, how the pandemic affected this part of northeastern Queens, quite frankly, before anywhere else in the country. I have a distinct memory of walking in Main Street, down Main Street, Flushing, in early February, on a Saturday night in early February, and noticing that some of these Chinese restaurants and Korean barbecue joints and all these other Asian cuisines, places that are usually packed 24/7, let alone on a Saturday night, were actually closing down early because of the pandemic. And that's when it hit me, before I think it hit the rest of the country, that this thing is coming, because I'm sure families in China were hearing that, who had family members in China were hearing that, you should be ready for this because it's bad here. And that's what they were doing here. But the there's been honestly a pandemic in itself, an epidemic of anti-Asian hate crimes in New York, especially. What's going on here, and what can we do about it?
I mean, obviously, most people talk about last couple of years under Donald Trump, especially last year with some of his horrible rhetoric that was coming out when he had the soapbox to talk about the Chinese virus and vilifying Chinese Americans. And we kept saying, stop saying China virus. It's fueling the hatred against Asians and Asian Americans around the world. Words do matter. So we know that that had an impact. But we also have to recognize that it's the social conditions, the economic injustice that we suffer from, right? So right now, as you know, if you go around Flushing, just around College Point, where Blend Public Housing is, we have the largest food pantry line in Queens. Every day, there's a line that extends about 12 or 13 blocks, and people wait about 2.5 hours to get their lunch and dinner from this food pantry line. These are mostly Asian American immigrants, Hispanic, Latina, Black, and there we have so much poverty. And even before the pandemic, people don't understand. 80% of New Yorkers were living paycheck to paycheck. That we suffer from the worst social mobility before the pandemic. We are the wealthiest state in the nation, the 10th wealthiest state compared to other nations in the world, with the state GDP of $1.8 trillion, with the worst upward and social mobility. What does that mean? It means that no matter how hard working class folks are putting their time in to get ahead, there is no upward and social mobility. So the social conditions need to be addressed to get to the root of the hatred and violence we see against, whether it's Asians. 10 years ago, it was against Muslims. It only takes one person like Trump or any other person to set that off, to start saying something that pit communities who already have a scarcity mindset, who are already suffering from lack of basic needs, housing, education, healthcare, to all of a sudden get infuriated and enraged, and they're going to take that rage out on the closest person that they feel like that's causing their suffering. And right now, in this moment, that happens to be Asian Americans and Asians. So we can put a band-aid and tell Trump to stop talking like that, or we can actually invest. We can go talk to that young Black or Hispanic teenager who may be lashing out because he feels like no matter what he does in life, he's not going to get a job, he's not going to go to school. We can actually dissect what is going on in his world and as what he's suffering from, and provide invest in that person or we can say, you know what, that person is racist, that person is have always hated Asians. So let's lock him up. Let's just make an example, and let's scare everyone else not to hurt Asians. That doesn't work. That is just a short-term solution that never works. So we have to improve the social conditions by investing in our people.
Right, absolutely, and to shout out that food pantry in Flushing, so people can look it up and donate if they can. It's La Hornada. They've been doing really great work. Like you said, like if you go into Flushing, Queens, since the pandemic, this line has been just nonstop. I've passed other food pantries where, as the pandemic went on, I guess some people were able to finally go back to work, which not always a great thing during a pandemic, because who knows if that job has actually put safety precautions in. But regardless, you see the lines somewhat slowing down or shortening. Obviously, there's ebbs and flows. We've seen them grown again, but this line in Flushing has just continued, and it really shows exactly what you just said, that there is an inequality in this country in general, but in this state, in this borough. I mean, honestly, I think Queens gets the shaft 9 times out of 10 when it comes to New York in general, because I just don't, because Brooklyn and Manhattan get all the glory. As much as I love Brooklyn and Manhattan. But Queens is the most diverse place in the entire country. I mean, this when people talk about America, United States of America, as a melting pot, that is Queens. We are the home to the two the two airports in New York City. I mean, this is where people come when they want to come to America, and they land in New York, and they go to see the Statue of Liberty. If they're coming by plane, they're landing in Queens.
Yeah, Matt, you make an excellent point. And I think moving forward, as we recover from COVID, we can't lose sight of that. People still want to come here to make the impossible happen. That's always been what New York was about. The immigrants, hearing the stories about, oh, you know what, you could just come to New York City and just work 60, 70 years, like my parents did, right? And that you could still make it. You could make the impossible happen in New York City. But the problem is that for the last 30 years, if you can't beat someone who's burning third base. Like, no matter how hard you work, you can't beat an Andrew Cuomo who was a second generation political with money and power. That's how people feel. And I think that's why I'm getting so much support and emails and texts and social media, because they see this confrontation as David versus Goliath, and they desperately want to feel like, in this country, in this city, the small guys, the immigrants, if they put in the time, if they're honest, if they have integrity, they can still win. And I think it's so important that we get this right, and not just talking about Cuomo. I'm talking about overall policies. That why do we have an economy where we continue to reward the wealthiest? Why do all the tax breaks, all the tax corporate breaks go to the top 1% of this country? That no longer, even when every economist have now said that doesn't work. You need to invest in people. That's real economic growth. We still can't get there. And I hope that moving forward, we can get past Como. And if you really want to reverse and do everything that Como did, we invest in our New York, we invest in our people, we end austerity budgets, and get past the neoliberal mindset. That's how we beat Como.
Now, this is a bit of a local. It's a bit of a local specialty local Flushing question. But while I have you here, I got to ask. Now, I always tell people that Flushing is sort of been experiencing a gentrification that's different than anywhere else when we talk about gentrification. Usually, in Brooklyn or parts of Manhattan many decades ago, people think of gentrification as well-to-do or wealthy white people moving in and making areas unaffordable for minority groups or working class people who've lived in those areas for generations. Now in Flushing, what's happening is a bit different. Flushing has already been this melting pot over the years. We have Chinatown, we have Koreatown, we have areas that are lots of Greek people, areas where there's Italians, Irish, swaths of different Latino ethnicities, the Peruvian, Ecuadorian, Guatemalan, you name it, Mexican. We have it in this area of Queens. But what's happening, and I've noticed over the years, is that these big developers and big money, not necessarily from like billionaire white people from or Midwestern wealthy Midwestern kids coming to live their dream. Foreign developers from Russia, China are moving in and buying up all this area, or even just buying homes and then not living in it and just buying it strictly for investment purposes, driving up the costs and making it harder for working class Asian immigrants, working class Latino immigrants, working class Asian Americans, working class Latino Americans, the working class in general in this area. How do we deal with this new or different type of gentrification in Flushing? Because I'm sure this is going to be the new. I'm sure we're the first to be hit with this new type of gentrification that's hitting Flushing. Like, there's going to be a point where I think we're going to see a lot more foreign investments come in all over the country and make life harder for all of the people, whether you were born in the United States or an immigrant to the United States. I think this is going to be the new thing over the next couple of years. What could we do about this?
Well, there's two things at the macro level. I think there was a study that was published a few years ago that indicate that I think 90% of the world's carbon emissions are produced by the top, I think 10% wealthiest. And it's precisely because of reasons like you mentioned, of the luxurious consumptions, of the empty second, third, fourth apartments that the wealthy has that are empty, that are just not used. And when you build these luxury condos, they're leaving tremendous carbon footprints in the environment. So this is actually all very intimately tied to the Green New Deal, not a real radical Green New Deal, meaning if we actually institute policies from the ground up based on investing in public and social housing, public transportation, public space, public playgrounds, where we know that it leaves the least number of neutral or no carbon footprints, and we retrofit all the public housing units in the next 10 years to make sure that we have microgrids that are based on 100% renewable energy, we know that we can build a better society from the ground up. But right now, our codes, our incentives are designed in the wrong place. We have been giving out tax breaks for luxury developers, like in downtown Flushing, like you referenced, for years. Where are we getting the capital to build in public infrastructure? Where we are losing grip on our public sovereignty every single second because we're selling it off in piecemeal to private developers. So how do we regain that? I mean, that's the challenging part of the next, I think, administration. We have a new mayor coming in. We have a new city council coming in. I know that we have a number of people who are aligned with our vision of what we want to take the city. So I'm hopeful in the next few years we will have a new way of looking at urban development that's not based on developments that fuel gentrification and displacing our people every single day.
New York Assemblyman Ron Kim, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Where can people follow you online?
You could follow me on Twitter at Ron T. Kim, and on Instagram at RK number 4NY.
Ron, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you'll join me again on this show, and I'll probably be reaching out to you every now and then because I'm your constituent. So
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Matt.
have a great night. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was this show, as you know, mostly. I mean, we talk about everything, but my specialty is the right wing and uncovering the misinformation and the conspiracy theories and what basically drives the far right, and that's my bread and butter. But if you look through the years of who I've probably covered more than any other Democrat in the same way that I cover Republicans, it's Andrew Cuomo. I mean, we there was the whole thing in the early days of the pandemic with that influencer Randy Rainbow. It's coining the term Cuomo sexuals for Cuomo fans. I mean, it's just like, I can't believe how people have been fooled by this guy. Like, if you've paid attention to Cuomo at any point over the years, you know he is. The thing online right now, what we're seeing is these people who would, these centrist Biden and Kamala Harris stands, who would have criticized Trump for some of the same things that are going on right now under the Biden administration. You see the term blue MAGA to define them. Andrew Cuomo is literally blue MAGA. I mean, he is Trump with a D next to his name. He may not say racist, sexist, bigoted things up front to you, but here's an example. Now, for years, it has been it's been such a long-standing rumor. It's been all but confirmed. People who are in the know have been saying he's responsible for it for years. And when his father ran for New York City mayor against Ed Koch, there was a slogan that came out of the Cuomo campaign, the Cuomo Sr., not Andrew Cuomo, Cuomo Sr. This was like in the late 70s. Vote for Cuomo, not the homo. Because there was a long-standing rumor that Ed Koch, who was a single, for his whole career pretty much, I believe, his whole career, was single because he was gay. Because obviously, that had to be it, right? It is pretty rare in politics, actually, to see a lifelong bachelor in politics. But that's the thing. I mean, you see it with Lindsey Graham, too. Not to defend Lindsey Graham, but the homophobic stuff thrown at Lindsey Graham is terrible. There's so much to attack Lindsey Graham for. And these neo-libs and centrists who do this scrape the bottom of the barrel with this. Stick to the actual criticisms of the guy. There's a lot to cover. But it was long rumored and all but confirmed 100%, honestly, that Andrew Cuomo, who was a senior advisor to his father's campaign, was responsible for that slogan. And to go further, as some of you may know, last year, in 2018, I worked with the Cynthia Nixon campaign for the governor. She ran against Cuomo. In the last days of that campaign, all of a sudden there were these flyers going around smearing Cynthia Nixon, who is running to Cuomo's left. She's progressive. Smearing Cynthia Nixon for being anti-Semitic. I believe, if I recall the situation, the smear calling her anti-Semitic came from some old petition that she signed back when she was, before she was campaigning, when she was a working actress. She signed some petition. I believe it was standing up for the Palestinians or taking a stand against something Israel was doing in the West Bank or Gaza. I can't quite remember. It was something to that effect. And that's why they were smearing her as anti-Semitic. She is literally raising 2 young children who are Jewish. I mean, her partner is Jewish, and their children are Jewish. And because she years ago signed this petition standing up for the voiceless, Cuomo's campaign, now Cuomo claims he knew nothing about it, yet some of his closest allies were behind this smear. They smeared her as anti-Semitic. And it was quite honestly like just gross. And we have the we talked about the Moreland Commission. I still can't get over that. Like it's almost comical. Like you can't write something so on the nose, right? That a big politician, the head of a state would come out and go, "We're going to crack down on corruption, and I'm setting up this independent commission to do so." And this commission starts investigating, and who comes up in their investigation but a trail that leads to to Cuomo himself. So as they get closer, he comes out and goes, "Look, the commission has done its job just as it's really getting started. It's done its job. We don't need it anymore. It's disbanded." It is, and I just I just can't, I fear that if this doesn't hold, nothing will, and Cuomo will go on to his dream really is to become the president. It has been those rumors have been running for so long. Every election year, it comes up for I don't even know, at least the last 2 cycles where Cuomo is going to run. And he really did himself a solid with his PR for his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. He really got on TV and really played it up and successfully put across this great television character that's not Cuomo, but he was playing him. Another thing a lot of people don't know about, and this story has always stuck with me. As you all know at this point, New York State, before marriage equality was the law of the land. And you could get married to, a gay couple could get married, a lesbian couple get married. Didn't matter. Any, man, woman, man, woman, whatever. In New York in 2010, before that was the law of the land at the federal level, New York in 2010, I almost feel weird explaining it, but I honestly think if there's anyone, like any Generation Z people watching this, I do need to explain it that way. That's what I was thinking of when I just explained that. Like, marriage equality has been here for so long, I think a lot of young people don't realize that this wasn't a thing until very recently. Like, I'm a millennial, an older millennial. I'm 86, 1986, but like, it was a huge part of my political life. I was in politics at that point, well into it, where this was a major thing we had to fight for. Gay couples being able to get married, marriage equality. And in 2010, New York State passed marriage equality, at the state level. And people really heralded Cuomo for doing this. But what people didn't know is California, when did they were the first state. When did California, when was that? California marriage equality. That was in what? I feel like that was 2008, right? 2008. So here's progressive New York coming years after California did it to make marriage equality a thing. It happened in numerous other states in between. Progressive New York, obviously, you think they'd be on the forefront, but no, they were late to the game in 2010 in terms of at least, progressive blue states. But what people don't know, and this story's always stuck with me, is that activists in New York, LGBT activists and marriage equality activists were pushing the governor to do this hard. And they were just getting pushback, from his administration. And in this news article I read, I think it was in the Daily News or maybe the Times, it's out there, you can look it up. It's stuck with me forever. One of the main things that convinced Andrew Cuomo to come out for marriage equality and make it a reality, all these peons begging for it apparently wasn't enough for him. His girlfriend at the time, I believe Sarah Lee. Was that his girlfriend? Right? I think so. She was the famous cooking show host. But his girlfriend at the time apparently started pushing him about it because her brother is gay. And she wanted to see him get married. And so that was one of the things that affected Cuomo's position on marriage equality. Like think about that. Like that's like Republican shit you hear where they don't care about a social issue until all of a sudden they find out that their son or daughter is gay or transgender or has a certain disability or whatever. And then all of a sudden, this position they've been against, when all these constituents of theirs were saying, we are living under this, we are this. We need the government to step in and treat us equally. They didn't care until they had someone in their life, a direct family member who they needed that protection for. That's what Cuomo did. Sandra Lee. Thank you, Gregor, in the chat. Sandra Lee. Like, it is just like unbelievable what people's perception is of Andrew Cuomo. It's just it's baffling. Yet somehow and listen, Ron Kim had some really nice things to say about de Blasio. I didn't want to go there because it's a completely different conversation. I feel differently about de Blasio. I was a supporter of his, voted for him. I think he's been a big disappointment. But I do think he gets blamed for a lot of things that he has no power over. For example, the MTA. This shocks a lot of people. The New York City mayor has no authority over the New York City public transportation system. He has no say in how the NYC subways run. He has no say in it whatsoever. And people always think he does. When people would go to work for the pandemic and the trains would be shit, everyone would blame the mayor. And the fact of the matter is that lies with the governor. Governor Cuomo is responsible for the MTA. People don't know that. De Blasio, his issue is like 99% with the NYPD. That's his baby. Every issue you have with the New York City police state, that's on de Blasio. So that's where I criticize him, and that's where I think, but that was a different conversation. But, there's so much that people should need to know about Cuomo. And I don't know if anyone got my reference to I titled this episode, "We Need to Talk About Cuomo." There's a movie called very good movie. You should watch it, called "We Need to Talk About Kevin." And it's honestly, it's literally about a family who is raising children. And one of them is turns out to be a sociopath. One of them ends up literally being like just someone who just kills people for pure sport, doesn't care, doesn't have any remorse, doesn't get, and there's nothing wrong and thinks he could get away with it. It's a great title for a movie. We need to talk about Kevin. And it's obviously not exactly analogous, but we need to talk about Cuomo. People have to stop sweeping the issue, and that's where the title of the movie comes from. You can't sweep this issue under the rug. We need to confront it before it gets even more out of hand. All right, folks. Patreon.com/Matt Binder to support this show. We are, sometimes I'm just like, I can't believe how close we get to hitting like new goals with the Patreon and then all of a sudden, we get a bunch of new patrons, and then we have to lose some patrons because I know times are tough. So again, if you can't afford to do so, I always say this every show. Please take care of yourself, take care of your family. Don't feel compelled to give something you can't afford to give. You can support this show for free without spending a dime by going to youtube.com/Matt Binder and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Follow me on other social media platforms at Matt Binder on Twitter, at Matt Binder on Instagram, which I use Twitter all the time. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, you'll get a lot there. Don't use Instagram that much, but I'm approaching 1,000. I have a lot of followers, more followers everywhere else. But to me, it's baffling I have that many on Instagram because I hardly use it. But if that many people follow me on there, I guess I'll have to start using it. So at Matt Binder on Instagram, twitch.tv/Matt Binder. The show is simulcast on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, and Facebook every week. I'm going to actually start rolling it out to more platforms because I see even more platforms are rolling out live stream features. You can, if you missed the live version of the show, you go to doomedpod.com and catch the audio version of this show. If you prefer, listening to it on your commute or when you're doing chores around the house or, taking care of the kids or whatever. And you could catch the show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a moment, please drop by the iTunes, Apple Podcast, whatever they're calling their podcast platform now. Come on, Tim Cook, settle on something. Leave a review if you could. A written review, a star review. I'd really appreciate that. It helps boost up our numbers so more people see the show. Now, if you can afford to give a small donation, patreon.com/Matt Binder. We are literally, I think, less than a dozen patrons away from hitting a goal. Now, I haven't written that one down on the Patreon, but to me, hitting 200 patrons is a huge goal for me. And we are, I think 9 or 10 away from 200 patrons. And I mean, that might not seem like a lot if you subscribe to a Patreon that has hundreds of thousands of subscribers. But I'm doing this show all alone. I'm a one-man band here. I'm the only host. I'm the only producer. I'm completely solo here. And a lot of those other shows have help. Even if there's just one host. They got producers, they got co-hosts, they got, So I'm always really can't be more thankful to how much you guys support me and doing this stuff. So if you could afford to becoming a patron supporter, patreon.com/Matt Binder. I really would appreciate it. Yeah. If you're in the YouTube live stream right now, you could give a one-off super chat donation. I will read your super chats on the show. I promised the new patrons that I would read their names. I used to be able to read every page back in the day when there wasn't that many patrons. I used to be able to read everyone's name. But as the show, I have every episode as a thank you. But as the show's grown, I can't do that. I'd be here for 20, 30 minutes just reading patron names. So I've started reading the latest patrons. So if you join the Patreon between after the last episode ended, and honestly, if you join right now, I'll read your name. You get a shout out. And if I miss you today, you get read for the next episode. So joining the patreon.com/Matt Binder, becoming a patron over just the last week, we have Chris W., Tim D., Kowalski, Mighty Mouse, James M., Logan H., Joshua R., Jade, and Maxwell G. Thank you guys so much for becoming patrons and supporting the show. Literally could not do it without you. The show the quality has been, you guys can see, I probably have one of the best video qualities in the independent media, leftist politics, live streaming, podcasting game here. Got this great mic from a listener who sent it to me. The only dynamic USB mic in existence it's not the only, I'm not this isn't the individual one, but this brand, this one microphone line is the one in existence, and a listener sent me one, and I can't thank them enough for that. It really upped the quality. I got a new, I also thanks to patrons, I was able to get a new windscreen here, so my P's don't pop as much as usual. No plosives here, folks. What else? Yeah. There'll be much more to come. Oh, just got a new patron. Spirally, thank you so much for joining. See, folks, this show is in real time here. Real time. I'm gonna read a super chat or two for the freebies, and then we'll go into the second half of the show, where patrons and live stream viewers can join me. Samantha with a super chat. F. Cuomo, nursing home scandal, and sexual abuser. I'm going to reach out to Lindsay Boylan. You guys might have recall last year when I had I had a week ahead of the New York state primaries where I was interviewing a progressive primary challenger in New York every day. And Lindsay Boylan was running, was challenging I think it was, what's his face? Nadler. She was primarying him, I believe. Well, she was running for House to become a congresswoman. And we were supposed to be on the show, and then a family issue came up, and she had to reschedule. She had to cancel last minute, and we tried to reschedule, but this just wasn't enough time beforehand. I shouted her out in the episode. Still wanted her to win. She's running again for, I believe, Manhattan DA this year. So I got to reach out and get her on the show again. Hopefully she'll do it. I think she will. Not Manhattan DA. Manhattan Borough President, excuse me. She's running for Manhattan Borough President. Yeah. I'm going to get her on the show. Andrew with a super chat. I want to say thank you, Ron. I respect you primarily for your policy positions, but also much respect for speaking up against the Cuomo machinery. Yeah, this is big. I line up with a lot with Ron Kim, obviously not everything. For example, most recently, he's come out and endorsed Andrew Yang for mayor of New York. I'm not sold on Andrew Yang at all. But what I would say is I want Ron Kim to push Andrew Yang to the left on a number of issues, and let's see what happens. But a lot of things I line up with Ron Kim, and he was a endorser of Bernie Sanders for president, and this is this is huge. Like this to have a sitting member of the New York State Legislature come out and do this. It is big. It's big. I voted for Ron Kim every time that I could. I'm trying to think how many cycles I've been able to. I lived in this area for my whole life. You all know I'm a Queens lifer. Born, bred, raised in Queens. But I've been Ron's constituent for a number of years. I don't think since 2013. I think I was just outside his district for a few of those earlier years. For maybe maybe just that first term. Right. Just got a slew of more patrons. Innisfree with thank you so much for becoming a patron. Zachary W, thank you so much for becoming a patron. We might hit 200 patrons today. Patreon is slow to update, but we might just be like 6 or 7 patrons away from hitting 200. Jeez. I'd be pumped. Let's read. Paul, thank you so much for the super chat. Just give me a super chat. No comment. Before we get to the rest of these, let me read Renee's, and then we'll go to the second half, and I'll read the rest of these. Renee says, "Class war against the elderly." That is exactly what's happening here. That's exactly what's happening here. Um, Especially when you get to, and I should have brought this up with Ron, because I would like him to hear him talk about this some more, but I believe the number of elderly um, Asian immigrants are the make up the most of any group who live in poverty. I'm not sure if definitely in this state. I know that for sure. So that is a huge issue. That is a huge issue. Um. Oh, another patron. Inez, thank you so much for becoming a patron. I really appreciate that. Um. All right, let's go to the second half of the show. If you become a patron, still, I'll give you a shout out in the second half, and then I'll give you all another shout out again in the next episode if you missed this cutoff. And let's go to the second half of the show. I will open up the Skype phone lines. If you want to download Skype, or if you already have Skype on your computer or phone, you'll be able to call into the show. Last week, we had some of the greatest calls. Honestly, I'm going to go as far as to say some of the greatest calls that any sort of politics show that does calls, period, has ever done. Seriously. I mean, legitimately, I'm not even propping it up. You guys know I am super humble when it comes to promoting this show. I am a terrible self-promoter. My buddy Michael Brooks and I would always laugh about what a fucking amazing self-promoter he was. Dude can do it so naturally, and he was so good at it. And honestly, I think obviously he was immensely talented, but also I think his self-promotional skills, without a doubt, helped him become the the level of commentator he was. But we would also joke about how damn awful I was at it. Just oh man, just horrendous. I'm still terrible at self-promoting. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. But I try. I'm trying to get better at it. But I will proudly say that the people who called into this show last week were amazing. We had, first of all, one of them is about to be on the show as a main guest for the main half of the show, for the first half of the show, just from becoming a caller. He goes by the name Spacco, and I'm going to be reaching out to him very shortly. I wanted to have him on. I didn't want to have him on right after the Rush Limbaugh episode because I wanted a little bit of a gap between the two because I didn't want people to get too much of the same thing 2 weeks in a row. But he has an amazing background in how these boycotts against right-wing media work. And it was just like the most insidery, like not in a boring, I mean, literally the guy walked us through how this stuff works in a way that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. There's even some stuff that I wasn't completely attuned to. And he called in just to give it to us and lay it down for us. So I'm going to have him on the first half so we can explore more of it, get into further depths. Because that was a call, he just called in. I want to really, have a full-blown conversation with him about it. So he'll be on shortly once again to walk us through this stuff. We had a caller from Texas join us while the whole crisis was going on, where millions of Texans were without electricity because of a winter storm that the Texas Republican-led administration didn't prepare for. And he called in to give us an on-the-ground report and to share his true feelings about his senator, Ted Cruz, hightailing it to Cancun while his constituents were freezing without power in Texas. And he had some choice words and an interesting perspective that only a fellow Texan could have. So if you want to become a patron and get that stuff, patreon.com/mattbinder, you could catch that episode. You go on the Patreon archives. It'll be there for you, that patron half of the show from last week. We're going to have another episode then. Will the callers be just as good? I don't want to say I doubt it, because that won't be, again, that would be terrible self-promotion on my part. But if the callers would be half as good, we would have a hell of a show for you right now. So let's jump to that second half. Once again, patreon.com/mattbinder, youtube.com/mattbinder. Subscribe there. Doomedpod.com for the audio version of the show. Follow me on social media everywhere. Just search Matt Binder. I'll come up. And then other than that, thank you all for tuning in, and join me for the second half of the show. Otherwise, I'll see you all next time on Doomed. We are back. Oh, I forgot to... all that hype for the calls, and I forgot to sign in to the Skype system. Doomed Live. Sign into Skype. Type in Doomed Live. I believe the exact username that will pop up is Doomed Live _1. I don't know why. I gotta change it, honestly, because that's ridiculous, the _1. But type in Doomed Live, it'll undoubtedly show up. And you'll be able to find me and call in. The phone systems are now open. Pyro in the YouTube chat says, "This is the Binder decade." I'm feeling good about the growth of this show, honestly. And I got great response from that YouTube video I did a couple of weeks ago on the Boogaloo Boys and why it's dangerous for the left to fall for their shtick. I got a lot of subscribers from YouTube on that. So I think if I continue with that stuff and keep at it, I think this show can really continue to grow at a level that I wasn't prepared for. But I'm happy that it's happening. We got our first caller. I believe this is Renee. How are you doing, Renee?
Fine here as a resident mediocre caller.
I mean, Renee, as a regular caller into this show. Hold on, let me pull you up on the screen here. I think you have.
I have that advantage.
I mean, you've been listening to the show. The bass. Oh, that's a nice bass. You've been listening to the show for you. I could never do that as a bass player. I would never.
Yeah, us goth kids, us post-punk kids,
But as a longtime listener of this show, I think you can attest to just how good the callers were last week.
Yeah, I mean, I would say technical rather than good.
All right, Renee, what would you like to talk about today?
Well, basically as an intro, because I sent you a message on Twitter, so I shouldn't complain as much because I have like that kind of like direct relationship. But the possibility of like hosting a show on Spain, I got in contact with my good friend Cuñado de Izquierdas, Javi, who's more on the Marxist YouTube kind of wing.
Oh, he's a Spanish leftist YouTuber.
Yeah, he does like.
And when I say Spanish, I don't mean Latino. I mean he's Spanish
from Spain. Yeah,
based. Yeah.
And he does like a lot of like sort of like historical videos and also like kind of like glossaries as well. And he does them in both languages, in English and in Spanish. So the thing was to talk about like this recent like debacle regarding the Spanish rapper Pablo Hasso, who did like a rap against the Spanish king
Hmm.
about regarding their own form of like Cuomo-like corruption, but this with the aristocracy and the royalty involved. So the point of what's the purpose of having a monarchy, especially in the context of Europe and the European Union, and also in regards to austerity economics and such. And the fact is that mostly when it comes to criticizing royalty and the king and all that, the Spanish are very hardcore, I guess, in regards to criticism in general. So they threw him in, they arrested him, and that created like a backlash of like a armed protests and violent protests and all that. But at the same time, that's coming off the back of like extreme police repression, a very poor management of COVID, and very strenuous austerity measures, and frankly, like the youth being very tired about the status quo.
Right, right. So what's going on there in terms of? Is there been? I'm guessing the people hit the streets over his arrest.
Yeah, exactly. And that created like a sort of like this kind of like a chain reaction that it's sort of similar to the Chilean October revolt, and basically like this kind of like I guess it also comes off the back of unfortunately like these COVID protests, or whether or not this kind of like restrictions or not, and use of mask and all that. But that basically, we're talking about a very old country that has like this sort of like a feudalistic system that goes on top of neoliberalism. Now
Right.
at the same time, there was also like a New York Times um, uh, report. I mean. Editorial on the Spanish event, and why was the fact that the youth were reacting in such a way that they had like nothing to hope for, or what have you, which I thought was like a sort of like a sort of lopsided way of looking at it, like a sort of no future, because if they're protesting and they're fighting for something, that means that they're expecting something better, and at the
Right.
same time, of course, not seeing the grander picture of like something more international involving Colombia, Chile, and what have you.
Right. Right. So yeah,
Yeah,
I would be very interested in having that leftist Spaniard YouTuber on
yeah,
to talk about it.
he's actually a narco-communist, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
more even more radical than Jamie, in fact.
Oh, JB Peck from Antifada and my co-host
Yeah,
on Majority Report Thursdays, along with Emma.
yeah, you can have like a you can have her on at the same time, and like perhaps like with questions and all that. I also added Montserrat to the conversation.
I should probably for the second half maybe I could get Jamie on and have the two of them compete over who's further left.
Yeah, well, basically, there's like the Spanish tradition, I guess, in that sense. You could say there's like the Jewish New Yorkers that went over during the Spanish Civil War and fought on the side of the Republic.
Right. All right, Renee. Thank you so much for the
He
call.
also to end this, he also did on the Cunhal de Izquierda's channel. He also did like a sort of observation regarding this, but basically on the side of why Pablo Hasél got arrested, and whether or not the idea of having a Spain is actually, as a federation, is actually a fiction.
Right. Right.
Okay, with that, I'll drop off for now.
All right, Renee. Thank you so much
I
for the
know when to
call.
quit.
I'm gonna.
Nobody can say different.
No. That's not what it's about. It's just I think a lot of times though, I think you call in and you give us the summary, which is perfect, because you usually are calling in to pitch a guest, to be quite honest. And then
Right.
you're going to give too much when I should have the guest you're pitching on to talk about it. Uh,
Yeah. Check your Twitter, and it's on the conversations, and there he is.
All right, sounds
so you
good.
can get in touch with him.
Will do. Thanks, Renee, for connecting us.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, let's go to the super chats here. Dave with a super chat. Thank you, Ron Kim. Yes, he was really great. Renee says, troll Cuomo with YouTube videos, Mr. Kim. This is a human rights abuse. What YouTube video should we troll Cuomo with, Renee? I should have asked you when you were on. I didn't see that, though, when you were on. Brad with the super chat. Cuomo should be charged with second-degree murder. Peter. I believe I saw Peter's super chat pop up the second we finished up with Ron. That was awesome. Thank you, Matt. No, thank you, Peter. And yes, Ron was awesome. Renee, check out Twitter. Oh, he's promoting the Spanish story he just called in for. Yes, absolutely. I will definitely reach out. St. Peter with a super. St. Peter gave me a super chat. The St. Peter? No. Doomed if I do, doomed if I don't. Thank you, St. Peter. Laurie with a super chat. Hey, Matt, I will also up my Patreon if you use a little guy liner on MR. Oh, that was a whole thing today. Right. That was a whole thing. Oh, maybe I need to pull out the old guy liner on a majority report. Brody Man with a super chat says, I will also up my Patreon for guy liner on MR. Please give a shout out to my son Connor, who turns 1 tomorrow. Not only that, but Connor, I am going to give you one of these. Where is it? Here we go. Happy birthday, Connor. Happy first birthday, Connor. The big one. Yeah, that's you guys having a party? Because if you're having a party, then let me give you one of these for that first birthday party. Yeah, I've done the first birthdays with my 2 kids. Yep, that's a special one. They remember that one. I don't know if they remember it, but they're aware of what's going on in that one. That was my thing with my firstborn, and then obviously once I found out that age range where they're more aware of what's going on, I knew for my second. But that was big for me, knowing that he hit that age where he was aware of what was going on. It just wasn't like this thing that just ate and slept, and you could literally do anything around him and it wouldn't matter because he had no awareness of what was happening in the world. That moment they start discovering their hands, and then they become a full-fledged 1-year-old, and they're walking and starting to say things, and they get excited about things. That's the special time right there. Peasant chick with a super chat. Do you have any memories of the first Eminem show? Oh boy. For those of you who don't know, there's always new listeners. There's longtime listeners who've probably heard this stuff 100 times now, but then there's newbies who I need to start at square one for, I feel like. When I worked for the Majority Report with Sam Cedar, when his second child was born, Sam went on paternity leave, and for the first time since Sam launched the show in the current iteration in 2010, he trusted the show to be hosted by someone else. Your new listeners might think Emma was the first, but she's not. Michael Brooks and myself took over for Sam during Sam's paternity leave, and we hosted Mondays, and not only that, people enjoyed it so much that we continued to host Mondays together until I left in 2015. So I think Sam second was born in 2013. And so we did Matt and Mike Mondays for like 2+ years, I think. Jeez. The first Matt and Mike Monday, I don't remember. I think the first Matt and Mike Monday, I may be wrong here, but I think I interviewed the lawyer for Weave. For those of you who don't know who Weave is, at the time, he was a hacker who got sent to prison for finding an unsecured link to AT&T's customer base. I believe that was it. And he went to prison for that and had his lawyer on to discuss it. And now Weave was a troll. Well, he was known for being a troll at the time, and it came out that dude's a legit, straight-up white supremacist neo-Nazi. Now, if you listen to the interview, I wasn't really all that sympathetic to Weave the person as I was to what his prison sentence meant, because, you know, he didn't go to jail for something he did for being a horrible far-right winger. He went to jail for trying to warn AT&T about an unsecured link detailing the customer information. This was 2013. So I spoke to his lawyer about the situation. Again, you could find it if you want. The point was that to focus on the issue at hand, not Weave the person. I think that was my first interview on Matt and Mike Mondays. This is before people knew about that giant swastika tattoo on his chest, Weave's chest. Again, his lawyer has gone on to take some really big, important cases in that whole tech realm of transparency and accountability. You know, he's the guy is legit. I forgot his name. And he is not a right winger. He is a. I mean, he was a major. Tor Eklund, that's his name. I remember even thinking he was a bit of a he was becoming a bit too much of a lib during the Russia Gate stuff. I was even a little bit surprised at his takes on that. He was you know, but Tor Eklund was a good interview. If you guys want to watch that one, Grim says Glenn Greenwald represented Weave too. I don't know the issue with Glenn and Weave. Again, the interview was not about Weave's character. It was about what he went to jail for. Because he didn't go to jail for being a racist. He went to jail for something that someone like Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning would be in prison for. I mean, you see what they're going after, what they went after Chelsea Manning and Snowden for. Doug on the Roof says, if you like vintage Binder, he debated a men's rights activist Paul Elam once, and it was a blowout. Good watching. That was my first YouTube debate. I gotta tell you, if you watch, you could see I was completely I wasn't polished. I was super rough around the edges. You could tell I was nervous. I looked super young. And I still managed to completely own him. I don't get how that was possible. Um, yeah, if you guys look up, I know the weave has become a talk in the chat now, but if you guys look up the case and what it was being talked about at the time, The Verge said why Weave's hacking case could change the internet. Again, the story wasn't Weave. The story was the implications from what he went to prison for. Like, it's the same thing where when, like, the ACLU gets a lot of shit for when they would defend, like, the KKK's right to hold a rally or whatever. And listen, I disagree with that. I don't think they have to do that. I mean, you can stand up for First Amendment rights without and still pick your battles. But I get why they do it. There are some people who feel so strongly about these things, and for some of these things, like when it comes to this tech stuff, like I talked to, like that hacking case, I feel strongly enough about too, where it's bad if someone you don't like even gets swept up by the law for doing that. We got some callers saying hello. Let me see what people are adding me on Skype. Oh, I still have the Skype symbol up. Whoops. Zoe talking about my old school vids, like when I debated Paul Elam. You were so cute though. Yeah, I think I was. I was a late bloomer, so I think my awkward stage was honestly still going on then, to be quite honest. Some might say I'm still going through my awkward stage. If you want to call in, feel free right now. Let me let everyone who. Hey, feel free to call back in. Renee with a super chat. Follow Doomed. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Kit Kat. Back to Peasant Chick and my memories of the first M&M show. Other than the interview, I have a lot of memories with Michael in general, but of that first M&M show, I don't know. I don't think I have that much other than that first interview I did. Kit Kat with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Kit Kat. RRMT, excuse me. RRMT with the super chat. Thank you, buddy. Logan with the super chat says, at the beginning of COVID in New York, I remember seeing coverage of mass graves dug by prisoners. Who were those people, and was that Cuomo or de Blasio? I remember what you're talking about, too. I'm pretty sure that was Cuomo, I think. Don't quote me on that, though. Let me check it out. But hold on. Let me take this call. Hey, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Sorry, I got
Oh yeah, put me down on YouTube and let's listen to me through the Skype. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
My name's Chris. I'm calling from Utah.
Hey, Chris from Utah. What would you like to talk about today?
I just I used to live in Flushing. I just saw what you were talking about, and I went to law school there at CUNY Law, and
Okay.
It just reminded me. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous.
Oh no, don't be nervous.
It's just got me thinking, like because I was, I don't know, maybe this doesn't have, kind of second guess myself a little bit, but because I was raised a Mormon, and I remember it.
Were you? I'm sorry to interrupt, but were you in Flushing? Because I know there's a Mormon. Oh man, what do they call it? You would probably know, but very close, not far from me, there is a Mormon. When they send the two young people out in the
like a mission.
The mission, yes, thank you. I see them walking around all the time. They always say good
Yeah.
morning, hello. The two young men who walk around to spread, I guess, the word Mormonism.
Yeah,
Um,
I was actually there. I was in New York to go to law school, but yeah, um yeah, I went to church there and everything, but I kind of I think because I'd lived in Utah my whole life, and I think moving to New York sort of helped. It kind of expanded my. I guess I realized that I was a bit of a racist. You know what I mean? I didn't think I was, but I like and I started to realize that I had these and a homophobe too. Really, like I always considered myself pretty liberal, you know.
right.
But I realized I had these like things that I'd grown up with as uh, that I blame mostly on my religion or just now, you know, looking back. But I think
Listen, don't be shy or nervous saying this stuff because I think it takes a big person to come out and say this stuff. Especially, obviously you're telling me this because you're changed now. You're changed now. But I mean, and honestly, this is how we break through to a lot of people on the right. To be quite frank, I know you said you consider yourself to be a liberal, but some of the most important activists who help people leave white supremacist movements and the far right were white supremacists and part of the far right movement, and they were neo Nazis themselves. I'm not saying that's who you were, but I'm just giving you an example.
yeah,
And so they come out and they say this is who I was, and they are really upfront about it, and they're really integral in getting people to leave those dangerous movements. So again, not saying that's who you are, but there's probably a lot of libs right now out there who are in your who are in your shoe, who are in the shoes you were in right now, and
yeah.
you could be breaking through to them too. So please
Well,
don't.
I think like you sometimes don't like I wouldn't have known that had I not like moved to New York, you know, and had friends that I knew were were LGBTQ type of people because I don't know. I remember I just had these thoughts that I it's kind of hard to explain. I've tried to explain it to people since, and I kind of yeah, I kind of transitioned out of my faith around 2013. I came back to Utah in 2010, but um, yeah, but with because the Mormon Church was really big on Prop 8 in California and was pushing that, and anyway, I just think being around people that um, it just
Is there a moment you feel comfortable sharing, like a specific moment where you
yeah,
began noticing this?
yeah, because there were people like I remember before I moved out there, I had a roommate, and we would argue a lot about gay marriage issue, you know, and I thought of myself as pretty liberal, but and he would always compare it to like the civil rights struggle, and I would argue that it was different, and but I remember I was riding my bike home. I lived in Jamaica, and I went up to school in CUNY there in Flushing, and I was riding my bike home to Flushing, and I remember thinking somebody had done something nice for me because they were all the students there were super nice, and I remember having this weird thought like, well, it's weird that this person would be so nice because I knew he was gay, and I remember thinking, well, why why can't they be good people just because they're gay? It was a weird like it just sort of woke me up a little bit, you know,
Hmm.
and that and then I anyway this feels I hope I'm making sense. I don't know.
No,
Just
I
when you were
think.
talking to that
Listen,
guy earlier.
I'm someone who I don't have this personal experience because like I said, I was born and raised in Queens my whole life. I'm 34 and I've lived in Queens my whole entire life, and I don't imagine ever leaving. I mean, maybe if I hit some jackpot and become super successful and had to move somewhere, I can't imagine not having a home base in Queens even then. Um, you know, And what I mean, like, say I had to move to do a thing in Los Angeles or who knows, and just spitballing here. That's how connected I am to Queens. So I don't have this experience because I've grown up in this world. That doesn't mean I haven't seen racism and sexism, but in New York and homophobia. But like in New York, it obviously exists in New York, but in New York, to me at least, how I was brought up and the people I was around and my friends, I was lucky enough to discover the punk scene at a very young age, and the punk scene does have its own problems, like everything does, but it's very progressive and leftist and welcoming to all, or at least the people I was friends with were, and my best friends were people of all ages, religions, races. I mean, I was in a punk band that played together for like 4 years. We played multiple shows every week, traveled the all over New York and the tri-state area, and I was my guitarist and my vocal. I was the bassist, and my guitarist and vocalist were immigrants from Ecuador and Colombia. Our drummer was a black dude who was like a lot older than us. And then when he left the band, another Colombian dude joined the band, and these were my best friends. And then I had another group of friends who I hung with all the time, and one of them was Mexican, another one was Filipino, and these were just things in New York. As a leftist in New York, like you obviously realize these things, like their races and how that affects them, because obviously you run into the cops and you see how they treat some of your friends one way and some of your other friends another way. But in terms of us as like being friends, like we saw those differences in terms of how we were treated by others, but we all treated each other the same, at least when I was around everybody.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
it's an experience I don't have. So it's really interesting to hear someone like yourself come in on this show and tell me about these things, because it must be, though, and again, not against you or anyone else. Like if you're raised a certain way and you move somewhere that's completely different, and everything you were raised on, at least when it comes to those specific issues, it's got to be like really jarring to find out that like the people you loved who raised you strayed you wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was like, my dad was a Democrat, which was rare. We were there, and they used to have this saying in the church that you can't be a good Mormon and be a Democrat, and so I always like clashed with people in the neighborhood and friends politically, but I always assumed that they weren't racist, or that they weren't. But I think the older I got, the more I realized that a lot of people I grew up with were racist, really, you know what I mean? And because you can't help with things that the church taught and still teaches. And anyway,
right.
Anyway, I hope that.
Mormonism is interesting in that aspect, because I mean, in certain aspects there's a lot of religion, but Mormonism specifically, the racism seems to be built into the founding of the religion.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it explains why you guys believe what you believe, right? I mean, for those who don't know, can you give an example of one of those things?
Well, like, see that when that would come up, see the two problems for me when growing up was always that we wouldn't allow black people to have the priesthood. And then the other big thing was polygamy, where Joseph Smith and Brigham Young had a lot of wives, And I always kind of got around because I mean they had this change in the priesthood policy when I was in the 70s, shortly after I was born, and so and I always kind of explained that away, thinking because they always said Joseph Smith gave the priesthood to black people, but then it was changed by Brigham Young. So I just figured it was a mistake that he made. but but there's stuff in the scriptures, in the Book of Mormon that call the people with black skin that it's a curse from God, and that if you're righteous, then the skin color will turn white eventually and stuff.
Jeez.
And
Yeah. Isn't there? Don't they have an interesting take on the Native Americans?
yeah, they claim that the Book of Mormon is supposed to be written by Native Americans, and they came here from Israel, from Jerusalem. Like,
Ooh.
but it makes sense. I mean, when you're raised with it, I've realized now.
Oh
It
no,
seems
no. I could completely understand. What do you think? Have you seen the Book of Mormon?
I haven't. No, yeah, I haven't seen it.
I
But
will.
yeah, like,
I will say this. I have a love-hate relationship with South Park and Trey and Matt. Honestly, I think there are some things that they were hilarious and spot on about, and then a hell of a lot of things where they partially to blame for at least the cultural aspect of how some young people think about the world. They are a big part of the whole that whole blase people who care too much about things are the ones who are idiots sort of worldview
yeah,
that came out of and a lot of far right people believe that the alt right, the Pepe lovers, people who like using Pepe and the Kekistan flag, a lot of them believe that worldview that South Park instilled in people, that if you care too much you're the problem. And by I care too much, I mean if you care about issues too much, you're a problem. That's and but I saw Book of Mormon, and obviously it's very edgy and edgelordy aspects of it. But the actual Mormon critiques is really well done and spot on, honestly.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah,
I,
I've heard,
I,
yeah,
oh yeah, have you heard from Mormons who have seen Book of Mormon?
I've, well, yeah, I've heard. Yeah, people talk about it, but I don't really know. I've seen like clips on YouTube, but I don't know the whole story, obviously.
Do you have you heard any takes on what they think about it?
Oh, the Mormons. I think it played here in Salt Lake, like a version of it. Maybe it was touring or something. I think generally people have a pretty good sense of humor about it that are Mormons, but
Right.
yeah,
Right. All right, Chris. Thank you so much for the call. This was really great.
yeah, I think.
You're a great caller, so don't feel shy to call in again. I mean, feel free, please.
All right, yeah, I followed you since 2016, really,
Oh,
and
see,
but yeah, but I haven't joined Patreon or
that's
anything, but
no,
I'll.
don't hey, listen. If you'd like to, and you could, I would love it if you did. But if you don't want to, or if you can't, it's not a problem either. Um, if you don't mind me asking, because you said 2016, which is, I feel like there's a huge portion of people who knew me from the Majority Report, and then everyone who found me after I left the Majority Report, how they found me scatters, like it's all over the place. So if you don't mind me asking, how did you find out about the
It,
show or
it,
me?
it was actually like I'm kind of. I started out as the TYT Jimmy Dore type fan, and I still because I actually that goes back to New York too. I used to listen to Jimmy Dore on his Comedy and Everything Else podcast, and so I still kind of like knee jerk sort of want to defend him a lot of the trouble he gets into, and I sympathize with him sometimes. But that's his when he interacted with Sam in 2016. That's the first time I started watching Majority Report. Then I gradually started moving more toward you guys and less. I still listen to him now and then, but he's got some issues.
Yeah,
I,
see, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of people disagreeing with me about this, but as I continue to see how he covers things, I honestly don't. I think the biggest thing is he is just unwilling or doesn't think it's necessary to put in the work to actually learn about what he's talking about. And he's got this good thing going. He makes a ton of money, I'm sure, doing what he does. So why change it? So he just continues to not know about things and talk about them. Now, granted, I'm sure there are things that you're listening to him. I'm sure there are things where you agree with him on, and sure, yeah, I don't think he's someone who's like becoming, someone who is maliciously going to like. I don't think he's becoming a Dave Rubin. I truly don't think that. I mean, maybe he could down the line, but at this point, right now, I don't think he is purposefully, maliciously becoming a Dave Rubin. I think he's just that lazy and just cares about number one, him and his show and making sure he's successful. I don't think there's any real movement there. Like, I don't think there's any, if you're watching a show in hopes that there's a political movement behind it, that's not the show. If you're watching a show just to be entertained, then maybe that's an entertaining show for you, and I get that. So that's not like so. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he has some good. I like he when he talks with Max. Yeah, I mean, he's got a. Yeah, I don't know. I probably shouldn't. Like, yeah.
I mean, I don't like the thing is like not to get onto all this again, but like the force to vote stuff. I thought it was an idea. Like I think the strategy could have worked. It also could have not worked. It could have been a positive to the Medicare for All movement. It could have hurt the Medicare for All movement. We don't know. It was just a strategy that was just. I thought it was a good idea, but it didn't happen, and I also saw the negatives from it. But it was just that. It was just one of many strategies. It's not something to build the movement off of. But my real issue with him was the Boogaloo Boy thing. I thought that was by far one of the most dangerous things that I've seen from someone who leftists view as someone on the left. And I've never seen that come from someone who's in that category, who's that popular. So I was concerned. So that's why I made that video. I think we will see. I don't know if the Boogaloo Boys, but that's why. But it could be, it could be something adjacent to that. It could be something that comes out of that. I think we are in for another big right wing movement in the coming year or years. And so my worry of someone converting a swath of disaffected, unengaged leftists, or people who consider themselves to be leftists, because I don't really consider, if you supported Tulsi Gabbard, I don't consider you a leftist. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that's who most of those people are, the Tulsi Gabbard supporting left. Again, if you want to consider her an ally and like just welcome her as part of the big tent, that's fine. I mean, accept her endorsement of Bernie. That was cool to see that someone who wasn't exactly in our wheelhouse endorsed Bernie. Of course, accept that stuff. But she's not someone to lead the movement or be a visible figure in the movement or honestly be a part of the people who we put in office from the movement, to be quite frank. So I was just worried about the whole Boogaloo Boy thing. So that was my biggest concern. Other than that, I mean, I don't care about the door drama. I mean, it's completely unimportant to me. It's fun to talk about sometimes, but in the broader sense of things, I'd rather talk about the real right wing threats and how we're going to convince the Democrats to pass things that we would only be able to get done during this very small window we have where the Democrats are actually the majority.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, man. Feel free to call in again. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, talk to you later.
All right. There was another caller. I'm going to message them to make sure they call back in. There was two more callers, I think. Let me let them know. See, the system I have here is basically I got to let the people who are calling in when I'm already on the phone, I got them know to call back in when that call finishes. Hey, what's up? You are on the air. Where are you calling? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi. Yes. Can you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Cut out for a split second, but I think it should be good now. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Cecily, and I'm calling from Oklahoma.
Hey, Cecily from Oklahoma. What would you like to talk about today?
Well, I was gonna talk about my job a little bit. I'm a lab scientist. I do COVID testing.
Okay.
The other guy, he was talking about religion, and it reminded me of something that you and Jamie and Emma were talking about earlier today on Majority Report. And it kind of ticked me off a little bit. I love you guys, but I think you guys have a really big blind spot on this. And
let me know. Tell me.
It's the comment you guys made about Christianity.
Oh, I don't remember.
I'm a Christian. Y'all were saying like how like all Christians think like the Jews gotta go to hell or something for us to make it or something crazy.
Okay, I gotta make an addendum. I don't recall. I recall what you're talking about. If we did not,
Jamie was like, "Oh, I didn't know that," and I was like, "Well, of course you didn't know that, Jamie, because like that's crazy to say."
Now I should say because I've discussed this before on this show, and I always make sure to let people know that it's not Christianity as a whole; it's certain sects, specifically evangelicals. It's not something that all Christians. Because I actually was raised Catholic. Again, certain Christian sects don't look at Catholics as Christians, but that's again the same thing as the Jews in Israel thing. So I apologize if we came across like that, and maybe we did. I believe you that we did because I don't think we went too deep into it, so we might have just said something off the cuff without specifying. But I can tell you, as someone who was raised as a Catholic, which is Christian part of Christianity, that we definitely as Catholics do not believe in that part of the whole...
but I'm not actually raised Catholic. I'm Christian, but I'm a member of the Church of Christ. But I have a lot of friends who are Catholic, who are Baptist, who are Presbyterian, and I've never heard anything like that craziness about all the bad stuff about Jewish people. Like whatever y'all was talking about, I never heard about any of that. So that was I live in the Bible Belt, so I think I have somewhat of an authority on what's floating out there.
Right, but you might be. Again, I don't know about the Christians around you and the churches they belong with, but you should definitely look into the evangelical Christian worldview on this, because what we talked about, we might not have said it accurately in terms of which which churches believe in this, but the evangelical Christians, many of whom are part of the right, many of whom are actually elected officials, they actually believe that. They believe that
that's crazy.
The Jews need to be in Israel for basically the rapture to happen and take them to heaven, so the Jews can basically burn here.
Wow. I mean, that's crazy to me. I had to comment on it only because like I'm just getting into the progressive, or just starting to watch more and more, probably since last year, more videos and alternate media and stuff like that. And it's one thing that always bugs me. You know, I started out watching TYT and then progressed to Majority Report and a whole bunch of other people. And it seems like you guys really, like, not you specifically, but like from what all that I've started watching, like, except for maybe like Benjamin Dixon or somebody, like nobody really respects people who are religious. To me, there's like this blind spot of, oh, well, religious people, and it's always said like, like begrudgingly or something. Like,
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot of, if I,
No,
I
I know.
don't know.
I know.
It just rubs me
You're
wrong.
actually. You might think you're not making sense, but you are making one. Like I know exactly what you're talking about, and I actually agree with you. And again, I don't know how long you listened to this show, but on Doomed on this show, I get a lot.
I'm brand new to you. I'm brand
Perfect.
new.
So I get a lot into the Q over the past couple of years. I've gotten a lot into covering the QAnon conspiracy theory, and it's become like a religious cult to
Yeah.
the people on the right. And this is where I've talked about on this show how important it is for the left to understand how important religion is to so many people, because it is something that is missing from, like you just mentioned, it is a blind spot on the left. Listen, I'm someone who was raised Catholic. My father is Jewish, so I was also raised learning a lot about Judaism and learning a lot of Jewish, culture. I mean, I myself I'm ethnically an Ashkenazi Jew, and as someone who straddled those worlds, religion was a big part of my life, and I ended up today I don't believe, but I've always been disgusted by people who shit on religion, because I don't think they're getting
Thank you.
the
Thank you.
because I don't think they're getting the point of why it's important. Like I personally, I don't think there's a God. And I think that when we die, there's just nothing, just like before we were born. And I've convinced myself that I'm fine with that, because I think that's the truth. I just think that's what happens. I'll be happy to be proven wrong. Trust me, I would love for there to be a heaven, but I just don't believe in it.
And that's fine for what you believe, but
Right.
like you said, don't crap on me.
Right. But
It doesn't really have anything to do with me being a progressive, and I don't understand why people say, oh, well, they believe in these crazy things because they're religious. Well, no, because like I'm religious and I'm not a crazy person.
Right.
Like,
No, here's the thing too. I don't think religion is important in the sense of you need to understand why people believe in God or something like that, and understand that why they.
Right.
What I think is
Right.
important, and this is what I think is the big thing that religion provides. This is the main thing, and that is the community.
Yeah.
The church is really about the community. And
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
that is what the left is missing out on. And I think that's where they fail on a lot of things. Like, I get someone's beliefs, and I respect that totally. And I think everyone should respect everyone's religious beliefs, whether they are whatever Christianity flavor of Christianity there is, whether they believe that they're Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu
Right.
or Jewish or whatever.
Right.
But the thing the left is messing up on is what religion provides for people, and it's that community. People who may not feel like they belong to any sort of social group find that camaraderie every Sunday with their neighbors at church. And it's not a hobby they all need to be, they all need to have in common. It's not like a political belief. It's literally they all come together for this religion, and they do things together, activities together.
Right.
And
Right.
that's like so like that's this might shock a lot of people who are religious. As someone who, like you, who is religious and on the left, this is not going to be shocking to you. But a lot of that is very much in tune with socialism. I mean,
Yes.
the way they
Well,
take care of each other.
I'm not self-professed socialist, but I am, like, I'm somewhere between Sam and Cenk Uygur on the spectrum, but
Right.
that's exactly what you're saying is exactly how I feel. But I don't want to like get stuck on the religious thing. Really, what I was calling about. I just heard the other guy, then it reminded me of whatever this morning what you guys were talking about. So I just had to say that. But what I really wanted to call on is um so I'm a clinical lab scientist. I work in a lab in a hospital, and we also, alongside all the other lab tests I perform, I do the COVID testing. And last year, when it came time for everybody to get the new vaccine that had came out, most of us declined to get the vaccine. We're all scientists, people of science, but nobody really trusted the supposed studies that came out at the time. Like I think this was like into November, December, whatever. We all wanted to look into it further, and like we were just like holding out to let other people go in front of us, so to speak, to get just to just to see what was going to happen, type of deal. And then on the second round that happened in January, most people got it, but I didn't, because I just had a baby in October, and I'm breastfeeding. And at that time, of course, studies have come out now, but at that time,
First of all,
nobody.
congratulations. Not to interrupt, but congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. She's wonderful. She's perfect.
Oh,
But
I fellow leftist or progress. I forget where you said you're on the political spectrum, but fellow progressive parent here. So I
yes,
completely know. Yeah,
I consider myself a leftist or a progressive. Those terms to me are interchangeable. I'm not all the way to Jamie or whatever, but
right.
um, so anyways, but I opted out because at the time, like nobody was saying like, oh, whether it was fine for breastfeeding mothers, and I wasn't willing to stop breastfeeding my child for an experimental vaccine from an untrustworthy company, just for on a hope and a prayer that nothing would happen to me.
Right.
Especially because I want to have, more kids and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't want to risk something else just, because I couldn't wait a couple of months and wear a mask and whatever. So,
Right. Now
uh,
you're not. No, I think I know what you're saying, but I just need to just I've just got to ask to confirm because I know people are wondering in the chat. Now you're not. You're just talking about this specific new COVID vaccine. Like you're not an
yeah,
anti-vaxxer. You've
just
had your
this one. Yeah,
you've
no,
had your
just this
child
one. And
vaccinated. All the
actually, yeah, no, yeah, for sure. She's got her shots and everything. And I'm actually scheduled to get the COVID vaccine next week. So, like, I'm gonna get it. But I was just saying all that to say that, like, uh, I think a lot of people, including Sam and a bunch of people, and I don't remember your comments on it, but were seriously discounting the mistrust that people have in the government and big pharma and all of that, for them to just tell us what's safe and what's not. And so like I think that a lot of people were just wanting to wait it out just a little bit to see what happened when the numbers got bigger and bigger, just to see. And then I think that a lot of people now are gonna really start getting it now. I think like the waiting period is over, and a lot of people are just going to be rushing in to get the vaccine.
right, right. I listen. I think it is completely legitimate, especially in your situation where you were pregnant, to hold off on getting the vaccine. I think the addition of being pregnancy to whatever other medical conditions, even if there is none, just being pregnant in and of
Right.
itself is a reason
I didn't have any others.
to not do a lot of things. And taking a
Yeah.
brand new vaccine makes total sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with that very specific precaution at all. I also understand where the the skepticism comes from in various communities. I get that skepticism.
Right.
I think
I'm a black woman, so like there's nobody that can tell me, oh yeah, trust this white man from this big pharma company that he's not using you as his phase 2 experiment or whatnot, and he doesn't really know, and nobody's really confirmed his supposed numbers and anything like that. But like, we're just gonna go ahead and roll out with it, and you get stuck in the vaccine. And if it turns out in a couple of weeks or in 90 days we discover, oh, it looks like you won't be able to have kids anymore, then oops, oh well.
Right.
No.
Right. I listen. I totally get that. I think the real issue is, and you already explained how you're not an anti-vaxxer. You had your child
No, and I'm
vaccinated and
getting my
everything.
shot next week.
And I think the issue is, though, that I think a lot of that legitimate skepticism, especially like you mentioned in the Black community, I think there's a real fear there, and it's for sure used in bad faith by those bad actors who do not want anyone to get vaccinated, period. And that's what I think the worry is. And I do think that's also a legitimate worry. I do think we'll also see, I think there'll be doors opening in ways where more people than expected will get the vaccine. I also think people who shared your skepticism might have got pulled into the conspiracy theory world. I think
It's
both.
possible.
I think both worries are completely legitimate, and I think the answer is to find some way to straddle the two. So you make people feel safe taking this stuff, and let them take their precautions while also not feeding into the conspiracy theory, anti-vaxxer hysteria. The problem is that it's a very, honestly, I do think it's a very thin line. So I do get both sides of this. Again, if you're talking about, and like you were talking about, the scenarios that you mentioned, when it comes to straight up anti-vaxxers or people sharing just ridiculous conspiracy theories, like Bill Gates putting a tracking device in the vaccine to follow them and be Big Brother. That stuff I've got no time for. That's not what you mentioned, but I'm just giving you an
Me
example
neither.
of, yeah.
Don't you know, I actually had a coworker who works with me, is a fellow clinical scientist, told me about 6 months ago she didn't want to get COVID tested because she heard that there were chips in the swabs or something that they were inserting up your nose. And I was like, you've seen the swabs with your own eyes. And she was like, well, not those swabs, but other swabs that the other people use sometimes.
But you see what I'm saying, though, how thin that line is and how easy it is for someone who is a scientist even. And I'm sure they have one of the highest, best educations, highest degrees possible. How easy it is for them to fall over that line from skepticism and maybe what was a legitimate place to just insane conspiracy theories.
Exactly.
So it's I get the precautions taken, but listen, when it comes to someone who's pregnant, I think that's unquestionable, not even in my mind, a completely 100% legitimate precaution to take. Truthfully, if my partner was pregnant when this was all happening, I think we would have decided for her to wait it out too a bit, at least until, to be quite frank. But for me, I think that's the one thing. Anything else, and only because it's impossible to know because we haven't been testing this for 9 months.
Exactly.
No one has.
And if I was pregnant and I were to get it, they'd be using me as a participant in their study. They would use my number as a statistic as, oh, well, it looks like her baby might have turned out all right. So that's a number for us. Check. Like, that's how it works. They ask you if you're pregnant, and then they submit your information to, their study as, add on to, whatever they're looking at. I didn't want to be a part of a study. But luckily I had already had my child. So, that wasn't a concern, but I'm pro vaccines. I've gotten all the vaccines you can get. I also used to be a pharmacy tech back in the day. So, and we got vaccines every year. All the ones we had to get, we got them every year, all the time. I mean, I'm for science, what I'm for, but I just am not for unverified experimental science in certain situations.
Right. I mean, I don't. Again, I don't think in the for 99.9% of things. I think this has been pretty, from what I've read, been pretty well tested and is safe, and we're
Yeah.
seeing that that those initial
Yeah.
beliefs are true. But it is that I think I think the pregnant thing is the one thing, simply because we have not had it long enough to bring a baby to term, in terms of.
Right.
And so I think that is a fair assessment for that one specific thing. Everything else,
There
I
was
think you
a
should get the
study that
vaccine.
there was a study that came out of the UK about breastfeeding mothers, though.
Right. I haven't seen that study, but that's for a lot of things, though. They say for a lot of different treatments, breastfeeding is affected. So you can't breastfeed and take something. So that's
Yeah.
not surprising. That's not like anything crazy to me. There's so
No,
many things
yeah.
that fall in that category.
Right. So, but yeah, that's all I had to say. Thanks for taking my call.
All right. No problem. Thank you for calling in.
Bye.
Take care. No, again, I think I think that's the one category I would be I would be safe about. I would be on the safe side about it and be cautious about. And not because of the adult. I think for the baby, and that's just for pregnancy, by the way. When it comes time for your children who are born to get the vaccine, my children are getting it, because that's gonna be confirmed to be fine. And not because I think there's some conspiracy behind it. I don't think there's just things that when you're dealing with science, there could be side effects, unintentional side effects. Not because I think there's going to be some sort of baby only 5G chip in these vaccines. I think Lavacue says vaccines usually take years to develop. This was a rush, so understandable. I also think it was very cautiously rolled out as a rush. I think it's a modern scientific miracle, to be honest. And I don't think that the being cautious for pregnancies means that it's not safe for everybody else. Hey, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Msetti again. I'm calling from New York.
Hey, Msetti, how you doing?
Good. So I was going to call just because I was raised evangelical, as I've mentioned, so I could clarify on the I almost said on the Jewish question, which I guess technically it was, but not capitalized. With regard to evangelicals and the beliefs about the Jews.
So break it down for us.
Yeah. Okay. So it's actually less sinister than it sounds, at least from an internal perspective. So the idea is that in the book of Revelations, basically the Jews have to be living in their homeland in Israel, and it's contingent on the reconstruction of the temple. And so when the temple is reconstructed for the third time, because it's already been destroyed and reconstructed twice, when it's reconstructed for the third time, that's going to be like the end times. And so that's the last time it's going to be reconstructed, and that's kind of the beginning or a very, very definite sign that the end times, the apocalypse are happening, and that the Battle of Armageddon is going to take place. And so that's contingent on, and it's expanded on in evangelical lore, I guess you'd say. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty much like agnostic. That's the thing, but
right. But don't they believe
in evangelical lore, the idea is that the Jews have to come back, they take back their homeland, and they rebuild the temple, and then that's kind of the beginning of the end of the world. And it's weirdly schizo, as most things are in the right wing, because it's just like Jews aren't Christians, but we stand the Jews, but they're also not Christians, then they're not going to heaven. It's a weirdly confusing thing I was never even able to figure out.
Right, but here's the thing, though. If they believe that them going back to Israel and being there, that's the beginning of end times. The world is ending, and them being in Israel means that finally this is all going on, and the good Christians can ascend to heaven. But you just said it yourself. The Jews don't get to go to heaven. So where the
Yeah.
Jews get to be? In the end times on earth with hellfire and brimstone burning alive. I mean, I think you're not putting two and two together, my friend.
Yeah, no, and I can safely say I have never heard anybody address that question or even ask that question inside a Christian context. It's just like, okay, the rapture, we're all good, thanks.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I think the description that you've heard that you say is a little bit embellished is accurate. I just think they sold it to you differently. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, maybe. And I mean, even among evangelicals, there's a lot of heterodoxy, so I might view it pretty differently from anybody else. But the instance is, Revelations, you got to have all the players in place for things to start happening.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, I honestly.
It definitely plays into a lot of U.S. foreign policy and our funding for Israel. Definitely.
If listen, if there was a heaven, I would want everyone to be there. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean that seems to be the thing, right? That seems to be like, I don't want like and if heaven's supposed to make you happy, and you're like, for example, if I was baptized, so even though I am a non-believer now, I assume that my good deeds would still be judged in that way by the Lord, and I would go to heaven regardless.
Yeah, one would hope that the gods are virtuous and therefore judge you virtuously.
But even
so to
if
speak.
that God exists, and I go to heaven for being a good Catholic, I would want my pops to be there, and my dad's a Jew.
Yeah. See, and I
so
think
that would not make me happy. So if God wanted to make me happy, he'd have to invite my Jewish pops up to heaven. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the one interpretation I've kind of heard would to kind of mollify this problem, to kind of smooth it out, is the idea that so Jesus came and he died and fulfilled the old Jewish law and sort of created a new law, the New Testament on earth, and so that's what Christians follow. And so there's kind of this waffling where it's like, well, the Jews don't necessarily believe that the Messiah has come yet, but God will still judge them according to the old law and Judaism, even though they're technically wrong because Jesus did come. But so there's like some waffling there, which gets into really fascinating territory, but that's the closest I've heard to somebody trying to smooth it over.
Ah. See, here's the thing too. And you brought Jesus into all this. What you brought Jesus into this whole Christianity thing. I never quite understood how they squared Jesus being a Jew with their beliefs. I mean, I don't understand it. Like, even Catholicism, I never quite got how they viewed the Jewish people. I mean, Jesus was a Jew. The apostles were Jewish. I mean,
Yeah.
Everyone you view as these saints were Jewish. I mean, what? I'm very confused. Even to this day, I don't. It baffles me.
I know that, like pre-Vatican II, the Catholic Church had some interesting stances on Jews. Generally, in the evangelical tradition, people are a little bit more than gaga about the Jews, God's chosen people. It's not uncommon to go over to somebody's house, an elder in the church. Heck, my grandparents had one. They had the shofar, the ram's horn trumpet.
Right. Oh, that plays in the majority port every time Sam deems it worthy of being played.
Yeah, I got a really big kick out of it. And gosh, there's one church I went to one time that was even doing their own like little festival. I don't know the Jewish term for it. It's the festival of the tents, where you spend the time like outside and you put up the shelter. They were literally doing it with like Coleman tents in the church foyer. It's a little much sometimes.
Right.
And
the interesting thing is, though, that I feel like the people who have these really well-informed discussions like this about the church are usually people who were raised in it. I mean, obviously not everyone, because obviously the people who are the crazy, like the evangelicals, like you said, like the people who believe in the Jews having to be here so they can go to heaven, and so the Jews can be in the end times. Like, obviously they were raised in it, and that's why they believe it. But also the people who've come out of it really are usually those who best know it. I mean, it makes sense, but
yeah, there's really not. I would imagine if somebody's not raised in Christianity and they, from a scholarly point of view, want to understand it, I imagine it's about on the level of like learning to read like Egyptian hieroglyphics from scratch.
Right.
There's really not a good like starting manual. It's such a dense, complicated culture, and then you get back into, the Jesus freak movement and the Third Great Awakening, and just it's very complicated.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, and I'm sure there are a lot of people too who have this story, but for me, it's always been, the Catholic Church is what sort of educated me on my current religious beliefs, which is being a non-believer. Like, I remember being in 4th grade. I went to a Catholic school. It was a very good school in terms of everyone was very kind. They weren't like, they were very open-minded. New York City Catholic Church is pretty, probably considered liberal even compared to everywhere else. But I remember 4th grade, the Monsignor coming in to teach a class. And the takeaway that he wanted everyone to know, the big lesson of the day, was animals, your pets, don't get to go to heaven because they don't have souls.
Yeah,
And
I was brought up learning that too.
specifically remember the facade cracking to me then. 4th grade, that was when I began to question it all. That was the moment, because it didn't make sense to me. I had a dog that I had since I was 3 years old. What do you mean she doesn't get to go to heaven? Even if let's say like she doesn't technically get to go to heaven, if I went to heaven and God wanted me to be happy, which is what we believe heaven is, then I want my dog in heaven, so God should listen to me and bring my dog to heaven. Like, I don't understand this.
Yeah,
and then by the way, that Monsignor who taught us that. Ended up being a kid toucher and was sent away by the Catholic Church.
Fantastic.
I was an altar server when I was in Catholic school, and I served with him many times. Thankfully for myself, he never did anything around me. But one of my classmates was now this was a guy who had done this in other churches. And then he came to our school's church, where he was for many, many years before doing something again. And the person that he did that to was a classmate of mine. And that was the final straw for and this didn't come out till like a couple of years after I left that school.
Right.
And he definitely took advantage of this poor kid. They were someone whose parent worked at the church. And so after school, this person would go to the rectory and wait for their mom. And clearly that's how this father took advantage of them.
It is really scary how people in these positions of power in close-knit communities just start doing this. And I think in some cases, certain people get attracted to these institutions like churches, where you both have logic and emotion that you can argue with, and that's a very effective like matrix for like a narcissist person to manipulate out of. But then also I think sometimes
I just have to interrupt you for 1 second. This is going to be completely inappropriate, but someone in the chat just responded to my story. Pranay says, "Thank God you were ugly, Matt." And then they said, wait for it. And then they said, "JK, bad joke." I got to share something with you guys. He didn't make the same exact joke, but my father has previously made the joke about me not quite being the father's taste. So, so my own dad has made a version of that joke. So don't worry, Pranay. You're safe.
That's terrible. Gosh. Yeah.
I mean, that joke is clearly, we're all clearly mocking the idea that the Catholic Church has shielded these people.
Oh yeah,
it's horrendous,
insane.
And it's completely against everything that they claim the church should stand for. I mean, it's just not. I still can't wrap my head around. Like, obviously, I explained that the animal thing, having no souls, was the beginning of me questioning it. The the Monsignor from my own school being one of these guys was the
Yeah.
final
And if
straw
seeing
in me.
if seeing people like that protected doesn't make you just drop the whole thing and run if action's not taken instantly, if it like, wow, that should be the last straw for everybody.
Right. I mean, I, listen, I get you don't want to. I'm not saying everyone should leave the Catholic Church, obviously. I mean, but it should have been the straw that made it clear that this is unacceptable. And while the media and people publicly were saying this, clearly to this day we're learning that that's not the case. That this is still going on. This is still being covered up. This is still being swept under the rug. I mean, the Monsignor from my school went away. No one knew where he went. He never faced any legal ramifications for it, and the dude died, I'm sure, at this point, peacefully at some like Catholic retreat or something like that. Some
Yeah, no, I'm
some
sure.
like nice cabin
And
in the woods that they paid all expenses for, I'm sure.
yep. And you see the same thing happening in evangelical churches, yeah, I mean, there was a school I didn't go to, but there was a Christian school, and found out years later that there was, I mean, just an incestuous level of relationships between kids and adults in that school. Like, it was incredibly bad.
Right. I mean, listen,
just
I want to make this clear to people who are listening who might be from these religions. We're not talking about your beliefs in terms of believing in. I mean, the golden rule is wonderful. I love Jesus' teachings. I love some of these things that we learn from Jesus, from the stories we've learned about the saints. These are all wonderful, beautiful stories. I'm talking about the institutions and the people who interpret these stories in ways they were not meant to be interpreted.
yes, or people who take advantage of the power that they have in these institutions, and they don't take the faith seriously.
Yes.
I mean, nobody's saying that these faiths say, thou shalt have relations with your children. No, it's clearly not a Christian thing to do. It's evil. And so it's clearly sinful. I mean, these people don't care if they're sinning or not. I mean, there's plenty of examples of that. And certainly across all sorts of institutions, you have hypocrites and people who are abusing kids, and that needs to be stopped. It's just, I think one reason why it's talked about is because in churches it's just that much more shocking, because you wouldn't expect it, except now we do expect it. But,
Right. And there's also obviously the questions of whether some of these people existed. And I mean, I don't really think that. I mean, obviously it matters for history, and it's very interesting for historical purposes. But in terms of like the point of the religions, in terms of teaching these things, teaching morals and things like that.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think. I mean, if Jesus, I mean, I my belief is that either a person like Jesus or multiple people like him existed, and they like turned him into one amalgamated person throughout history for the Bible, or this person who was a Jesus-like figure got turned into the Jesus we know of today. I mean, I think that's totally legit. I don't know if that's the truth either. There very well could have been someone named Jesus Christ as well. I mean, I think the whole situation's a bit murky from a historical standpoint. But again, the point of these teachings, I mean, who can go against the golden rule? I mean,
yeah,
it's
I mean,
wonderful
you look
rule.
you look at like any parable Jesus told in the New Testament, and you can't disagree with it. It's good.
The thing that always bothered me actually is people who feel like they need. I mean, I don't mind if you need religion for your own personal get through the day, but the people who feel like they need religion, otherwise or other people need to have this religion, or they're skeptical of this person being able to have morals.
I think that's kind of insecure. Yeah.
I think that's very. I mean, to me, my moral is that we all live on this earth for a very short period of time. So why wouldn't you want everybody to have the most enjoyable, easy time out of it? I mean,
and take care of each other. I mean, that's literally what we're here about. Just try to solve problems and make things better so we can be more human.
Right. And I don't need the threat of heaven or hell to convince me that that's how to treat people. I mean, that's always the bizarre take for religion. Like, listen, if you like religion because of all the other various things, I totally get it. It's the idea of you couldn't think about treating someone nicely just because they were human being if it wasn't for this like carrot on a stick that's being dangled in front of you. Like, again, that's not everyone, but there are people who are like that.
And I think that really mirrors the carceral system we have in the United States, in as much as, oh, you have to have prisons, otherwise people will just do bad things and run rampant. You have to throw drug dealers in jail, and the idea that you have to have this concept of divine punishment, otherwise people will sin. I think those are inextricably intertwined.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't really. I mean, Jesus was I mean, here's the thing too. We talked about leftists and religion before. I mean, Jesus is a perfect figure for the left, or the Jesus as we know him from the Bible, is the perfect figure for the left to hold up as a figure who they should like show as like the face of leftist ideals. I mean,
absolutely.
Here's a guy who believed in who didn't believe in punishment. I mean, the only people he ever got mad at were like the wealthy bakers and those who were trying to take advantage. Like, I mean, he welcomed the sex workers. He welcomed the poorest of the poor. That's who he wanted to be around. Those are the people.
He took care of people because they were people. And that's what boggles my mind, is when you see these Christians like screaming about, trans rights and LGBTQ. Like, do you not realize that very not Jesus of you, dude, not cool.
Right. Grimm says Marx is greater than Jesus. I mean, from a standpoint of, we knew Marx as he existed. Like, we knew that the Marx that we know from his readings is a person, like, for sure.
Well, of course Marx is, because he's a sum of the course of history, and he happened later than Jesus, so naturally he is greater.
Right, but also
Marxist theory.
But also, like, if Jesus the person existed, then like Jesus the person actually was able to go out and act on these things. Like, Marx gave us a wonderful philosophical system and the rules to go by, but like Marx himself wasn't able to go out and actually help people in the way that we read about Jesus doing that thing. And that's not a dig at Marx, obviously. Marx was just a human being like all of us. He wasn't the son of God like Jesus Christ was. But I mean, Jesus took the actions, obviously. Again, we're talking about Jesus as he is in the Bible, whether he's, that person existed or not. That's we're straddling the line here. Just for the purpose of this discussion, Jesus was the historical figure as well.
Yeah. And it's I had a thought, it slipped away. Oh well.
All right. Grimm's not happy with me in the chat. Is not happy with me. Giving props to Jesus H. Christ. I'm sorry, buddy.
No, man, I remember there's this one kid when I was in college, and he would walk around wearing a shirt that said Jesus was a communist. I was always just like, man, that's cringy. But now I'm like, hey, that's woke. It's like it's the guy with the girlfriend meme, where he's turning and pointing.
Right. Well, Aaron says, I like to think that Jesus existed, but was maybe just a regular dude. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, if you're coming from I just told you guys what I believe. I said I laid it out for you as someone who doesn't believe. Obviously, if I believe Jesus was a person, I also don't believe he was the Son of God. He was just a good dude. But obviously, those stories. If you believe that he was just a person, though, then you believe he was a historical figure, and then you also must believe that those stories come from some sort of truth.
Yeah, and if he was a person, he was a pretty darn good person.
Yeah.
Seemingly.
Maninja says so. Well, this person's username is Maninja Cunt Punt. So take it for what it is. But he or she says so much Jesus standing.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's. I think a lot of modern Christians could learn a lot about Jesus, and if they read the New Testament a little bit more, we might have very different politics in this country. And like throughout the years, actually, I have often thought, like, I've always had this, I always like to compare the past and the present. And so I always think about, if these past events happened today, what would they go down like, alternate histories. And so, like, I think after January 6th, I first realized, if Jesus came back nowadays, the religious right would have killed him, just like they did, back in the Bible, like the right-wing religious institutions, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, They were the ones who killed Jesus back then, and we would definitely have the religious right going after him. Moreover, what did they want him to be when Jesus showed up there in Judea? They wanted him to be a military revolutionary who would take back Israel for the Jews and kick Rome out, and that would be exactly what the right wing would expect these days. They'd want him to kick out the left,
Right.
as
right,
George Soros.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Jesus existed or not, but the character in the Bible was a good person, even if it was a fictional person, a good person, and uh, the Christians who are on the right and don't believe in helping, and don't practice the Ten Commandments and don't help thy neighbor, could learn a lot from this person who they claim is their guiding light.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard agree.
All right, man. Thanks a lot for the call. That was really a great call.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, take
Have
care.
a good one.
Najat asks, "Is Matt white?" I am. I've discussed this on the show before. I've been confused. People think I'm Latino. People think I'm Middle Eastern. I've had people ask if I'm. Oh wait, we got. Renee, I can't take your call again, buddy. I'm about to wrap up. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm gonna read a few more. I'm gonna read the rest of the super chats, a few more comments, and that's it. I'm gonna. I think the phone calls are done for tonight. Going way over. Going way over. I am Italian. I am English, like British English. I am Ashkenazi Jewish. And I am Prussian. And now the Prussian part of me has always confused me because I am, as you know, Prussia no longer exists. It hasn't existed for a long time, but my grandfather came from Prussia to America. And I believe that he did. What was his parents? I can't remember, but he was Prussian. And so I never knew which part of Prussia. I don't think my dad knows either. And so I don't know how that works. Would I be the Prussian? Would I be technically where he lived in Prussia, what it is in current day? Or would I be a combination of all those things? Because Prussia broke up into Germany, Poland, and Russia. So am I whatever my grandfather lived in that became current day whatever? Or would I be German, Polish, and Russian? But because of my Jewish ethnicity, I always joke about how white supremacists wouldn't consider me white because I got my blood is not pure. I'm Jewish, but I'm white. Left as best as Prussia's Germany, right? But it's also Poland and Russia. Andy says Slavic most likely. Eastern European is a lot easier to say. I've met a few Prussians before. I've met other people who tell me their background's Prussian. It's happened. We exist. We're out there, folks. Also, to that British caller on the Majority Report last week who doesn't like me anymore because I mocked him. I could mock the Brits because I'm Brit myself. My dad says it's easier to say Ashkenazi Jew while completely misspelling Ashkenazi as badly as he could. Doing the Jewish people not doing the Jewish people a solid there, Pops. I'm sorry with that spelling of Ashkenazi. Oh, man. Yeah, but people have really thought that I was. They've asked me if I was Latino. They've asked me if I was Middle Eastern. People have asked me. No one's thought I was fully, but people have asked me if there was any relatives on my side of the family who are black, because they say I have but no, not as far as I know. And I'm white. I've always said I've never. I mean, people can think what they want, but when they ask me, I'll tell them I'm white because that's what I am. Mark says talk with a Brit accent. I cannot. I cannot. My dad actually lived in New Zealand for a time, so when he says certain things that you and his my grandma, his mom, was 100% British, like from Britain, hard came like lived, grew up there, had the accent my whole life, knowing her, and I hear it in my dad when he says some things. Alex says, give a shout out to new patrons. Do we have more new patrons? Let's see. I haven't checked. Ooh, we do. Let's see. Oh, RMF, thank you for becoming a patron. And Alex S, thank you for becoming a patron. Wow, we are just, what is it? It's a little bit late. Again, patrons a bit behind updating the numbers. But we are either 4 or 5 patrons away from hitting 200 patrons. And of course, as you know, all you patrons who missed that first half, and some of you who I did mention, you get another mention next week, just to make sure I hit you all. Like RMF and Alex S, you two will definitely get mentioned on the first half of next show. All right, guys, we're going very late. Let me read these super chats, then that's the show. Oh, in terms of people asking me who have I been confused for, people have said that I look like Prince. People have told me that I look like Mick Jagger. People have told me who else? I get Bart Simpson a lot, but that's more for my my wardrobe of wearing the same clothes often, having a very specific style. I'm not taking any more calls, Kowalski. I got to start wrapping it up, buddy. It's I don't know if for you people didn't watch on the Majority Report today, but I mentioned this earlier. I fell asleep last night putting the kids to bed. So around like 8 p.m. I fell asleep. And then I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I was like, oh shit, I fell asleep and the whole night's gone. But I couldn't get back to sleep. So while I had a full night's rest, I've been up since 3 a.m. So I'm starting to feel it now. And we're almost at 3. If we aren't at 3 hours, we're almost there. And my nose is starting to like bother me. I think I'm getting a breakout or something. I usually get during certain parts of the year, as the seasons change usually, and the weather's getting nicer all of a sudden. You can feel the spring in the air in New York City, at least. I usually get like breakouts, like on my skin around here. It gets itchy. I need to like pop out the face cream. Renee, whenever I ride my bike past Santiago's temple and someone's in my way, I say, out of my way, Raphite on the road. Solar Winds with a $10 super chat. Thank you, buddy. What do you think of the Safe Tech Act? Warner, Klobuchar, Hirono sponsoring. Sorry if you already covered this. I'm not listening live, but I'm eager to hear you destroy Cuomo. I have to know. I don't know enough about the Safe Tech Act. I have to look more into it. But thank you for getting it on my radar. I'll look more into it. Also, the Senate parliamentary. This happened just before we went live, so I haven't had a chance to look into it. Basically, shot down Bernie Sanders' push to get the $15 minimum wage put in the COVID relief bill. Bernie's gonna keep fighting for it, but we'll see what happens. I'll have to get more into that another day. I didn't even get to talk about the friggin' the detention center for migrant children reopening down in Florida. I'm gonna probably do a YouTube. If I don't do a YouTube video of that in the next couple of days and upload it to YouTube, I will definitely talk about it at the next show. But I mentioned I did a story on the Majority Report for it today, but I wanted to do one on this show or on my channel. So YouTube.com/Matt Binder. Be on the lookout for it. I'll probably do one, and if not, it'll definitely be on this show next week. Kowalski with super chat. The Pope said all good people are heaven bound. So this Pope is not bad for popes. This Pope's pretty good. Olivia with a super chat, $10 super chat. Thank you, Olivia. Just one of those cool little super stickers. Those we got a pair bowing saying thank you. Well, thank you, Olivia. And Peter with a $10 super chat. Great show, Matt. Reminder to everyone, you can look up Michael Brooks clips where he speaks on the place for religion and spirituality on the left. There were two major influences on me. I left when I was much younger. I would consider myself to be an atheist, but I don't like how that world has become. I don't like the idea of having to shit on other people's religion as much as a lot of those, especially the new atheists, do. It's not necessary. The idea of being a non-believer is just that you don't believe in that in the idea of life after death and there being an all-powerful God. You believe that we make the decisions. We are in full control as human beings, and we can be good to each other, so we enjoy this short life we have on Earth. Because when our time is up here, that's it. It's over. And that's just what I believe based on what we know. I don't think you have to shit on other people's beliefs. If they also believe in being a good person, but they believe in God and heaven, that's not a problem to me. If they believe in many gods or reincarnation, that's not a problem to me. The point is how you treat people here on Earth. Whatever you believe, it doesn't matter to me as long as it's not hurting anyone here while we're living here. But that's my reasoning for not believing in shitting on religion. But in terms of how the left needs to view religion as a community aspect and bringing people together, my two biggest influences are seeing how QAnon fills that void for people on the right and how the left needs to combat that in the only way that religion can. And then, of course, when it comes to an individual and at a moment or a movement or an event, the individual who's affected my view on that is Michael. I've always let him know I wasn't a fan of the more like hippy dippy new wave stuff he was into. I said that all the time to bother him, exactly that way. I get it. I respect it. It's not for me. But he is without a doubt the biggest individual influence on the idea that the left needs to recalculate its strategy when it comes to religion. Because it's important to people. B Buccaneer got in just at the last minute with a $5 super chat. Have you read the book War Against the Weak by Edwin Black? It's about the eugenics movement in America. They only considered WASP as white people. I have not, and it doesn't surprise me that that's the case. That people people who are technically Caucasian or white wouldn't be considered white by a slew of people. Like I said, there are religious groups and there are political ideologies, very big and influential ones that wouldn't consider me white, even though I just clearly laid out how I'm white. Kowalski says with a super chat. Go to bed, man, and get a physical soon. Physical. I'm feeling pretty good, man. James, this is not a super chat, but I saw this. James says, Matt, tell people about the protest at the Texas governor's mansion tomorrow at 4. I haven't seen this. There's a protest tomorrow at Texas governor's mansion at 4. But by the time this goes up on the podcast, this probably will have already happened. But for those of you listening to the live stream, apparently first of all, don't go without looking up the information. I don't want just a few people who are listening to this show showing up. But apparently that's a thing. James says, "Don't be a dick" is a pretty good golden rule. Yep. All right, folks. The show was honestly tons of fun. From a great, informative interview with New York Assemblyman Ron Kim, to the great calls we had, to this personal chatter about our religious beliefs and religion in a political context. This has been, again, another great show that was made possible by all of you guys. Don't give me all the credit. But yeah, again, we are closing in on 200 patrons. You could count the number on my hand. Whether it's 5 or 4, I can't quite tell you. It's Patreon just updated. We are definitely not 5. We are 4 people away. Maybe even less. Maybe 3 or 2. It might be behind just 1. It's definitely not behind by 4. But it might be behind by 1 more. So we're either 3 or 4 now away from 200. Mark says, "Good night, white boy." Thank you, man. I appreciate that. That was a good one. I really enjoyed that. That was really funny. All right, Mark, you especially have a good night. Everyone else, see you all next time. Undoomed.